Mark Holloway thought losing his daughters in a hospital corridor was the worst moment of his day, until he burst through the wrong door and found a dying woman who would change his family's life forever. What started as a father's panic became an impossible choice: walk away from a stranger with weeks to live, or risk three little girls' hearts on a love that could end in devastating loss. But his daughters saw something he couldn't: that sometimes the wrong door leads exactly where you're meant to be. Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Memorial General Hospital flickered overhead like dying stars, casting their sterile glow across linoleum floors that had witnessed 10,000 sorrows. Mark Holloway had always hated hospitals: the antiseptic smell that clung to everything, the hushed conversations that pretended death wasn't waiting in half the rooms, the way time seemed to move differently here, slower and faster all at once. Today, he had even more reason to hate them. "Daddy, I need the bathroom." 6-year-old Sophie tugged at his jacket with the urgency only a child could muster over something so ordinary. Her identical sisters, Emma and Lily, flanked her like tiny bodyguards, their matching ponytails bouncing as they nodded in solidarity. "Right now, sweetheart, we're almost to Grandma's room," Mark said, his voice carrying that edge of parental exhaustion that comes from being both mother and father to 3 tornado-force children. He'd been doing this alone for 2 years, since the accident that took his wife Rachel. 2 years of wrong-sized ponytails and burnt dinners and bedtime stories that sometimes ended with him crying in the hallway. 2 years of loving these 3 girls so fiercely it felt like his heart might crack open from the weight of it. They were here to visit his mother, who'd had routine knee surgery that morning. Nothing serious, the doctors promised. Just a quick visit, then home for the dinner he'd already planned: chicken nuggets, because Tuesday was always chicken nugget night, and God help him if he broke that sacred tradition. "But Daddy..." "Sophie, just a few more minutes." "But I really..." The hospital corridor stretched before them like a maze designed by someone who'd never needed to find anything quickly. Signs pointed in contradictory directions. Room numbers seemed to skip sequences. Mark had been here 3 times already, and still got turned around at the junction near radiology. Okay. He stopped, scanning for those universal bathroom symbols. "There. See the sign? Down that hallway. We'll all go together." But hospitals and 6-year-olds operate on different frequencies of chaos. The moment Mark's attention shifted to his phone, just to check the room number his mother had texted, the girls slipped away like water through fingers. It happened in that terrible space between one heartbeat and the next. 1 second they were there, 3 bright spots of pink jackets and purple sneakers. The next second, gone. "Girls?" His voice came out steady, but his heart had already started that sick downward slide. He spun in a slow circle, phone forgotten in his hand. "Emma? Lily? Sophie?" The corridor stretched empty in both directions. An orderly pushed a cart past, wheels squeaking. A nurse studied a clipboard. An elderly man shuffled by with a walker. No triplets. "Girls!" Louder now. A few heads turned. Mark didn't care. Every parent knows this particular brand of terror. The sudden absence where presence should be. The universe tipping sideways. The instant catastrophic thinking. Stranger danger. Emergency exits. Stairwells. Parking garages. Every nightmare compressed into one white-hot moment of what if. He jogged toward the bathroom hallway. They wouldn't have gone far, not really. They were good kids, smart kids. They knew better than to wander off. Except they were also 6, and 6-year-olds existed in a reality where rules were suggestions and adventure always seemed like a good idea. "Emma, Sophie, Lily." His voice cracked on their names. Other sounds filtered in, monitors beeping, televisions murmuring, the low hum of serious machines keeping serious promises to serious bodies. But no giggles, no patter of small feet. Mark's walk became a jog, then something close to a run. He checked the bathroom, empty except for a startled woman washing her hands. He doubled back, checking alcoves, peering into waiting rooms. His phone rang, probably his mother wondering where they were, and he silenced it without looking. Then he heard it. Laughter. Not scared laughter or nervous laughter, but that pure, unself-conscious joy that only children seem capable of producing. It floated down from the corridor to his right. The wing he'd been told was critical care, the wing he'd been avoiding because the last thing three energetic girls needed was to be around people clinging to life by medical threads. "Oh no," Mark whispered. "No, no, no." He ran. The laughter grew louder, mixing with voices now, his daughters' voices, talking over each other the way they always did, finishing each other's sentences and creating that peculiar triplet harmony that somehow made sense despite being complete chaos. Room 407. The door stood half open, light spilling out. The girls' laughter poured out with it, and underneath it, impossibly, another sound, an adult voice, thin and wondering, saying something Mark couldn't quite hear. He hit the door at a near run, his palms slamming against wood, and stumbled into a room he was absolutely, certainly, catastrophically not supposed to be in. The first thing he registered was machines. So many machines, their screens painting graphs and numbers that meant life or death in languages Mark didn't speak. An IV stand. A monitor. Equipment he couldn't name clustered around the bed like electronic mourners. The second thing he registered was his daughters. Sophie had somehow climbed onto the bed itself and sat cross-legged near the foot, her purple sneakers tucked under her. Emma stood on one side, holding a hand that seemed impossibly pale against her small fingers. Lily had found a chair and pulled it close, chattering about her favorite stuffed animal with the complete confidence of someone who'd known this stranger all her life. The third thing, the thing that made Mark's breath catch in his throat, was the woman in the bed. She couldn't have been more than 30. Dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink, framing a face so thin it seemed translucent, the kind of thin that comes from the body consuming itself, fighting a war it's losing inch by inch. Her eyes were enormous, shadowed with exhaustion that went bone deep. But those eyes were looking at his daughters with an expression Mark recognized because he'd worn it himself. Wonder mixed with hunger, the look of someone dying of thirst who'd just been offered water. "Oh my God," Mark managed. "I'm so sorry. Girls, get down right now. We need to—" "Emma, let go of her hand. Sophie, off the bed. We have to—" "It's okay," the woman said. Her voice barely qualified as a whisper, each word clearly costing her something. But she was smiling, actually smiling, this dying stranger, in a room that smelled like industrial cleaner trying to mask something darker. "It's really okay," she said again, and her fingers, the ones Emma was holding, tightened slightly, as if she was the one holding on. "They're not bothering me. They burst into your room. I know." The smile widened slightly. "Best thing that's happened to me in months." Mark stood frozen, caught between parental mortification and something else, something that made his throat tight. His daughters showed no inclination to leave. If anything, they seemed more settled, more at home in this stranger space than they had any right to be. "Your name is Evelyn," Sophie announced proudly, as if she'd solved a particularly difficult puzzle. "That's a pretty name, like a princess name. Are you a princess?" "Sophie," Mark started, but Evelyn laughed, a sound that came out more like a cough, but genuine nonetheless. "I'm definitely not a princess, sweetheart." "Then why do you have a fancy bed?" Lily asked, pointing to the hospital bed's various mechanical components. "Princesses have fancy beds." "This is a special bed for people who are sick," Evelyn explained, and Mark noticed how carefully she chose her words, not talking down to them, but not overwhelming them either. "It helps me rest." "Are you very sick?" Emma asked, her 6-year-old directness cutting through every adult pretense. Mark winced. "Emma, that's not— we don't ask people." "Yes," Evelyn said simply. "I'm very sick." "Does it hurt?" This from Sophie, her eyes wide. "Sometimes." "Our mommy was sick," Lily offered, her voice matter-of-fact in the way children's voices become when they've learned terrible things too young. "She was in a car accident. Now she lives in heaven." The room seemed to contract. Mark felt his face flush hot, then cold. This was it. The moment every single parent with dead spouse learns to dread. The moment when your children, in their infinite innocence, announce your tragedy to strangers. When your private grief becomes public property, delivered in a child's clear voice that knows the words but hasn't fully learned their weight. "I'm sorry," Mark said, And now he was moving forward, ready to extract his daughters from this situation by force if necessary. Really, we should go. You need your rest, and we're intruding. Please don't. Evelyn's voice stopped him mid-step. There was something in it, not desperation exactly, but close. A quiet plea that bypassed his embarrassment and hit something deeper. Please, she said again. If it's okay with you, could they stay? Just for a few minutes? Mark looked at her, really looked. At the machines breathing for her, measuring her, keeping her tethered to this side of existence. At the empty chair beside the bed that looked like it had never held a visitor. At the absence of flowers, cards, personal items, all the small decorations that transform hospital rooms from way stations into spaces where people are loved. At the way she was looking at his daughters like they were the first beautiful thing she'd seen in a very long time. Why are you alone? Emma asked, and Christ, these girls had no filter whatsoever. Evelyn's smile flickered. That's a complicated question. Our daddy is alone too, Sophie said, gesturing at Mark like he was an exhibit. But he has us. Who do you have? Mark felt something crack inside his chest. The question was innocent, asked with a child's complete lack of guile. But it landed in that room like a stone in still water, rippling out to touch everything. Right now? Evelyn's eyes met Mark's, and he saw something in them that made him forget to breathe. Right now I have you three. And that's more than I've had in a long time. Sophie beamed like she'd just been awarded a medal. Emma squeezed the pale hand she still held. Lily scooted her chair even closer. And Mark, who had walked into this room ready to apologize and flee, found himself unable to move. I'm Mark, he heard himself say. Mark Holloway. These are my daughters, Emma, Sophie, and Lily. And I really am sorry for the intrusion, but if you're sure, I'm sure. Evelyn's voice was stronger now, or maybe Mark was just listening harder. I'm Evelyn Carter, and this is the nicest thing that's happened to me in longer than I care to admit. Do you like coloring? Sophie asked, already pulling crayons from the small backpack Mark insisted they carry for emergencies. Because of course she had crayons. She always had crayons. I used to, Evelyn said, when I was your age. You can color with us now. And just like that, Sophie was spreading paper across the rolling table, organizing crayons by color with the intense focus she usually reserved for cookie decoration. Emma and Lily immediately joined in, debating whether the sky should be blue or purple. Purple skies are more interesting. Mark pulled up the empty visitor's chair, that permanent piece of furniture that spoke to the temporary nature of hospital existence. He should have felt awkward. He should have made their excuses and left. This woman needed rest, not 3 pint-sized tornadoes destroying her peace. But Evelyn was watching the girls with an expression that made Mark's throat ache, like she was memorizing them, like they were a symphony and she'd been listening to silence for too long. How did you end up in the wrong room? Evelyn asked him, her voice barely audible over the girls' chatter. Lost them for about 30 seconds. Mark ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of parental exasperation, which aged me roughly 10 years, heard laughing, followed it, and ended up here. And ended up here, he confirmed. I really should get them out of your hair, though. We're supposed to be visiting my mother, knee surgery, nothing serious, and she's probably wondering where we are. But he didn't move, and Evelyn didn't look like she wanted him to. Tell me about them, she said instead. Your girls. So Mark did. He found himself talking about the triplet dynamic, how Emma was the natural leader, Sophie the artist, Lily the diplomat who somehow kept the other two from killing each other. About their mother, Rachel, though that part came harder, how she'd been driving home from a late shift, how the other driver ran a red light, how Mark had gone from married father to widowed single parent in the space of a phone call. I'm sorry, Evelyn whispered when he finished. That's terrible. Yeah. Mark watched his daughters, who'd progressed from coloring to some elaborate game involving crayons as characters. But you do what you have to do, you know. They needed me to keep going, so I kept going. Evelyn nodded slowly, her gaze distant. Must be nice, having a reason that clear. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Mark wasn't sure he wanted to understand. I can draw you, Sophie announced suddenly, waving a crayon at Evelyn. I'm very good at people. Daddy says so. Daddy might be biased, Mark said, but he was grinning. I'm not biased. Sophie looked genuinely offended. I won a ribbon at school, a red ribbon. That's almost first place. Evelyn laughed again, that fragile sound that seemed to surprise her each time. I would love to see myself through your eyes, Sophie. And so Sophie drew, tongue poking out in concentration, while Emma and Lily provided color commentary and completely unhelpful suggestions. Give her a crown. No, give her a dragon. Princesses can have dragons. Mark found himself relaxing into the chair, into the strange stolen moment that felt both surreal and somehow exactly right. He studied Evelyn when she wasn't looking, the sharp angles of her collarbones, the IV line disappearing into her arm, the oxygen cannula resting near her nose. She was dying. That much was obvious, but there was something in her face, in the way she interacted with his daughters, that spoke to a person who was still very much alive, still very much here. What's wrong with your heart? Lily asked suddenly, because apparently medical privacy meant nothing to 6-year-olds. Lily, Mark's voice came out sharper than intended. That's a private question. It's okay, Evelyn said, though Mark noticed her hand moved unconsciously to her chest. My heart doesn't work the way it should. It's very tired. The doctors are trying to help it, but she trailed off, and the girls waited with the infinite patience children reserve for stories. But hearts are complicated, she finally finished. Our hearts work good, Sophie declared. Want to listen? And before anyone could stop her, she'd pressed her ear to Evelyn's chest, her face scrunching in concentration. I can hear it. It sounds like a clock that's running slow. Mark started to pull Sophie back, but Evelyn's free hand caught his wrist. Her grip was weak, but the message was clear. Let her. So he did. Emma and Lily took turns listening too, their faces serious as they concentrated on the struggling rhythm beneath Evelyn's sternum. They reported their findings like tiny physicians. It sounds tired. It sounds like it needs a nap. Maybe it needs vitamins? Maybe, Evelyn agreed, her eyes suspiciously bright. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Middle-aged, efficient-looking, the kind of medical professional who'd seen everything twice. She took in the scene with raised eyebrows. 3 children scattered across the room, one half on the bed, another holding the patient's hand, a father looking simultaneously mortified and transfixed. Everything okay in here, Evelyn? Everything's perfect, Marie, Evelyn said, and there was something fierce in her voice, a determination that seemed to push back against the machines and the pallor and the obvious wrongness of a 30-year-old woman in end-stage anything. These are my friends, Mark and his daughters. Marie's expression softened in a way that told Mark everything he needed to know about how few friends Evelyn had, how few people came through that door. Well, friends are good medicine, Marie said, checking the monitors with practiced efficiency. But maybe keep the volume down. Some of the other patients are trying to rest. We'll be quiet as mice, Sophie promised solemnly, then immediately started giggling, which set off Emma and Lily like dominoes. Marie left, shaking her head, but Mark caught her smile. You're going to get me in trouble, Evelyn said. But she was smiling too, wider than before, and Mark noticed color in her cheeks that hadn't been there when he first burst through the door. Sorry, he said, not meaning it at all. Don't be. Evelyn's eyes found his, held them. This is the best I've felt in weeks, maybe months. Because of 3 loud children destroying your peace? Because of 3 loud children reminding me what peace actually feels like. The words settled between them, meaning heavy. Mark felt something shift in his chest, a recognition he didn't have words for yet. Finished. Sophie thrust her drawing forward proudly. Mark looked at it and felt his heart stutter. Sophie had drawn Evelyn in crayon, stick figure simple, but somehow capturing something essential. She'd given her a crown of flowers, a huge smile, and 3 small figures holding her hands. The sun blazed yellow in the corner. Birds, or possibly airplanes, it was hard to tell, dotted the sky. But what got him, what made his breath catch, was the heart Sophie had drawn on Evelyn's chest. It was colored bright red, and from it radiated lines in every color of the rainbow. That's your heart, Sophie explained, pointing. I made it rainbow because rainbow hearts are the strongest. They have all the colors so they can't break. Evelyn took the drawing with shaking hands. For a long moment she didn't speak. When she did, her voice came out broken and whole at the same time. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You can keep it, Sophie said generously. I'll make you more. I can make you one every day. Sophie, Mark said gently, we don't know if we'll be able to visit every day. Evelyn needs to rest and we have school but we could come back, right? Emma looked between her father and Evelyn. Tomorrow? After school? Mark opened his mouth to explain why that wasn't practical, why they couldn't just adopt a dying stranger, why this moment, however lovely, had to be temporary. But then he saw Evelyn's face. She wasn't asking. She wasn't hoping. She was just open. Vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with the illness ravaging her body and everything to do with the possibility of 3 small girls walking back through that door. Mark hesitated. I suppose we could check if Evelyn feels up to visitors. I'll feel up to it, Evelyn said quickly. Too quickly. Then softer. If you don't mind, if it's not too much trouble. It's no trouble, Lily declared. We like you. You're nice. And you need friends. Out of the mouths of babes, Mark thought, his daughters had looked at this woman, this stranger hooked to machines, alone in a room designed for dying, and decided she needed them. Simple as that. No complex adult reasoning about boundaries or appropriate social behavior. Just, you're alone, we're here, problem solved. Okay, Mark heard himself say. We'll come back tomorrow, after school, just for a little while. The smile that broke across Evelyn's face was like sunrise, fragile and fierce and absolutely transformative. Thank you, she whispered. They stayed another 20 minutes. The girls colored more pictures, a garden, a house with too many windows, something that might have been a cat or possibly a small dragon. Evelyn asked them about school, about their favorite foods, about the stuffed animals waiting at home. She listened like their answers mattered more than anything in the world. Mark found himself telling her about his work. He ran a small construction business, mostly residential projects, good money but unpredictable hours, about juggling parenting with work, about his mother who helped when she could, about the community of other parents who'd become his unexpected support system. And Evelyn listened to him too, with that same intensity, like she was collecting these small, normal details and storing them somewhere precious. Eventually, though, her exhaustion became visible. Her words came slower. Her eyes started to drift closed between sentences. We should go, Mark said quietly. Let you rest. The girls protested, but he was firm. They said their goodbyes. Sophie with a hug so enthusiastic it made the monitors beep. Emma with another squeeze of Evelyn's hand. Lily with a solemn promise to bring her favorite book to read tomorrow. At the door, Mark paused. Evelyn? Yeah? Is there anyone we should call? Anyone who should know you have visitors? Her smile faded slightly. No one to call. The words sat in Mark's stomach like stones. No one. In this entire city, this entire world, no one who needed to know that Evelyn Carter was dying. No one who would care about 3 small girls bringing light into her darkness. Tomorrow then, he said. Tomorrow, she agreed, clutching Sophie's rainbow heart, drawing like it was worth more than gold. In the hallway, his phone buzzed again. His mother, definitely worried now. Mark texted back quickly. All fine. Got lost. Be there in 5. The girls chattered all the way to his mother's room, talking over each other about Evelyn, about her nice smile, about how they were going to make her so many pictures she wouldn't have room on her walls. Mark let them talk, his mind elsewhere. He was thinking about empty chairs and rooms designed for leaving, about a woman young enough to still have a lifetime ahead of her, trapped in a body shutting down, about the cosmic accident that had led his daughters through the wrong door into exactly the right room. His mother, Patricia Holloway, steel-spined and sharp-eyed even in a hospital gown, took one look at his face and knew something had happened. You okay? She asked, once the girls had been dispatched to the cafeteria with a nurse they knew. I don't know, Mark admitted. We walked into the wrong room, critical care. There was this woman, young, dying, completely alone. And the girls they decided she needed them. Patricia studied her son with the expression that had seen him through scraped knees and heartbreak and the worst day of his life. And what did you decide? That I'm an idiot for agreeing to bring 3 children back to visit a dying stranger. But you're going to do it anyway. It wasn't a question. Yeah, Mark said. I'm going to do it anyway. His mother smiled. Good. Sounds like you're raising them right. That night, after the girls were finally mercifully asleep, after the bedtime story and the water requests and the last-minute bathroom trips, Mark stood in his kitchen and thought about Evelyn Carter. He thought about her fingers gripping Emma's hand, about the way she'd looked at Sophie's drawing like it was a masterpiece, about the words that had slipped out. Right now I have you 3, and that's more than I've had in a long time. He pulled out his phone and Googled end-stage heart failure. The results made his stomach turn. Months, the articles said. Maybe less. Transplant lists with waiting times measured in years. Medications that bought time but not much. A slow drowning as the body turned against itself. And no one sitting beside her while it happened. Mark thought about his own wife, dying alone in a crumpled car before the ambulance arrived. He thought about last moments unwitnessed, hands reaching for comfort and finding only air. Tomorrow? He said to his empty kitchen. We'll go tomorrow. Outside his window, the city hummed on, indifferent to small tragedies and accidental graces. In a hospital across town, Evelyn Carter lay in room 407, clutching a crayon drawing of a rainbow heart, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she had something to look forward to. She had 3 small girls who'd promised to come back. And promise was its own kind of medicine, fragile and fierce, enough to make it through one more night. The wrong door, Mark thought as he finally headed to bed. Except maybe it wasn't wrong at all. Maybe some doors only look wrong until you walk through them and discover exactly where you needed to be. Mark kept his promise. The next afternoon, he picked up the girls from school and drove straight to Memorial General, ignoring the small voice in his head that said this was a terrible idea. That voice sounded suspiciously like his ex-mother-in-law, who'd spent the last 2 years telling him he coddled the girls too much, exposed them to too much reality, didn't protect them enough from the world's sharp edges. But Rachel had never believed in wrapping their daughters in cotton wool. She'd believed in raising them to see people, really see them, and to respond with kindness instead of fear. So that's what Mark was doing, even if it scared him. Even if this particular kindness might end in exactly the kind of heartbreak he'd been trying to shield them from. The girls had talked about Evelyn all through dinner the night before, all through breakfast that morning, all through the car ride to school. They'd made her more drawings, a garden this time, with flowers tall enough to need 2 pieces of paper taped together. Sophie had insisted on bringing her favorite stuffed rabbit, in case she gets lonely at night. You remember she's very sick, right? Mark had tried during breakfast, spreading peanut butter on toast with more force than necessary. We need to be gentle, quiet, no jumping on the bed. We know, Daddy, Emma had said with the patient tone of a child explaining something obvious to a slow adult. Sick people need gentle. Now walking through the hospital corridors with significantly less panic than yesterday, Mark felt his stomach tighten with each step. What if Evelyn had changed her mind? What if she'd only said yes because she'd been too tired to say no? What if the nursing staff took one look at 3 6-year-olds and barred them from the critical care wing? What if she died during the night? The thought hit him like a fist to the solar plexus. He slowed, the girls pulling ahead, and realized with uncomfortable clarity that he'd been assuming tomorrow. That Evelyn would have a tomorrow, and another after that, enough tomorrows for whatever this was to make sense. But end-stage heart failure didn't promise tomorrows. Daddy, come on, Lily called back, already halfway down the corridor. He followed, his heart doing something uncomfortable in his chest. Room 4. 07's door stood open. Mark heard voices inside. The girls, already having rushed ahead, and Evelyn's quieter responses. He paused in the doorway, giving himself a moment to observe unnoticed. Evelyn looked worse than yesterday. The thought came unbidden and undeniable. Her skin seemed thinner, more translucent, like if you held her up to the light, you'd see straight through to the bones. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. The oxygen cannula that had been resting near her nose yesterday was now actively in use, the tubing running up to the wall unit with its quiet mechanical hiss. But she was smiling, actually smiling as Sophie presented the garden drawing with the solemnity of someone bestowing a great honor. "We made you flowers," Sophie explained, "because the ones in here are sad." She pointed to the small arrangement on the windowsill, cheap carnations already wilting, probably from the hospital gift shop, with no card to indicate who'd sent them. "These are much better," Evelyn agreed, taking the drawing with careful hands. "Should we put them on the wall?" "Yes!" All three girls responded at once. Mark cleared his throat, announcing his presence. "We brought tape." Evelyn's eyes found his, and something passed between them. Gratitude mixed with relief, mixed with something else Mark couldn't quite name. "I was hoping you'd come." "We promised," Emma said simply, as if promises were ironclad contracts that could never be broken. If only the world worked that way, Mark thought. If only promises were enough to keep people alive, to keep cars from running red lights, to keep hearts from failing at 30. "How are you feeling?" he asked, pulling up the visitor's chair while the girls began the elaborate process of deciding where each drawing should go. Evelyn's smile turned wry. "Honestly, pretty terrible, but significantly less terrible than yesterday, which I'm counting as a win. Pain. Managed, mostly." She shifted slightly in the bed, and Mark caught the wince she tried to hide. "The doctors were surprised to see me awake and alert this morning. Apparently I'd been pretty checked out for the last few days." "What changed?" She looked at the girls, who were now debating whether the garden should go near the window or above the bed. "I had something to wake up for." The words landed in Mark's chest and stayed there, heavy and warm. Sophie climbed carefully onto the chair beside the bed, learning from yesterday, asking permission with her eyes first. Evelyn nodded, and Sophie settled in like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. "Do you have a favorite color?" Sophie asked. "Mine's purple. Emma likes blue. Lily likes yellow. Daddy says he likes green, but I think he's just saying that because nobody else picked it." "I genuinely like green," Mark protested. "What's your favorite color?" Sophie pressed Evelyn, ignoring her father entirely. Evelyn considered this with the seriousness it deserved. "I used to love red. Bold, bright red. But lately," she paused, her gaze drifting to the window where afternoon sun filtered through half-closed blinds. "Lately, I think gold. Like sunlight. Like the color things are right before they become beautiful." Sophie nodded as if this made perfect sense. "We can make you gold things." "Daddy, do we have gold crayons?" "We have every crayon color known to mankind," Mark confirmed. "I'm pretty sure we have 3 different golds." "Then I'll make you gold pictures every day," Sophie declared. "Until you're all better." Mark saw Evelyn's expression flicker, pain that had nothing to do with her failing heart. She opened her mouth, probably to explain that some things didn't get better, that gold crayons couldn't fix what was broken inside her. But then she seemed to change her mind. "I'd like that," she said instead. "Very much." Emma had found the remote for the television and was scrolling through channels with the focused determination of a child on a mission. "Do you like cartoons? We're allowed 1 hour of screen time on school nights, but Daddy says hospital visits are special circumstances." "I haven't watched cartoons in years," Evelyn admitted. "Years?" All 3 girls looked scandalized. "That's so sad," Lily said with devastating sincerity. "Cartoons are the best part of being alive." Mark caught Evelyn's eye and saw the smile there, trembling at the edges. "Then I guess we'd better fix that," she said. So they watched cartoons, some bright, loud show about talking animals that Mark couldn't follow, but the girls loved with passionate intensity. They provided running commentary, explaining character backstories and relationships with the encyclopedic knowledge children bring to their obsessions. Evelyn laughed at their explanations more than the show itself. Real laughter that ended in coughing, which made the girls pause and watch her with concerned faces until she waved them on. "I'm okay," she kept saying. "Keep telling me. I want to know what happens." Nurse Marie appeared during a commercial break, doing her efficient check of monitors and IV lines. She raised an eyebrow at the cartoon playing, at the 3 girls sprawled across chairs and bed corners, at Mark looking simultaneously exhausted and content. "I see you're back," she said to Mark. "Couldn't stay away, apparently." Marie's expression softened as she adjusted Evelyn's oxygen flow. "Evelyn's numbers are better today. Blood pressure's more stable, heart rate's less erratic." She looked meaningfully at the girls. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." After she left, Mark leaned forward. "You're doing better? Actually better?" Evelyn's hand moved to her chest, an unconscious gesture. "I feel better, more alert, less like I'm drowning." She paused, choosing words carefully. "The doctor said sometimes patients rally when they have something to rally for, that the mind and heart are more connected than we think." "You're rallying because of cartoons and crayon drawings?" "I'm rallying because I'm not alone." Her voice dropped to just above a whisper. "Do you have any idea what it's like? Lying here day after day, watching the ceiling, listening to machines waiting for the end? No visitors, no calls, nobody asking how I am or if I need anything. Just nurses doing their jobs and doctors delivering bad news with sympathetic faces." Mark felt something crack open in his chest. "No family at all?" "My parents died when I was 19. Car accident. After that, it was just me." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I was engaged once, 5 years ago, but when I got diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy, when he realized this wasn't going to be a quick fix but a lifelong thing, She trailed off. "He left," Mark finished, anger coloring his voice. "He left," she confirmed. "Said he couldn't handle it, couldn't build a life with someone who might not have a long life to build." "What an absolute—" Mark caught himself, glancing at the girls who were thankfully absorbed in their cartoon. What a coward. "Maybe. Or maybe just honest about his limitations." Evelyn's fingers pleated the thin hospital blanket. "I lost most of my friends after that. It's hard to maintain relationships when you're constantly canceling plans because you're too tired to leave the house. When you can't drink, can't stay out late, can't do any of the things people in their 20s do together. Eventually people stop inviting you. Eventually you stop hoping they will." "So you've been dealing with this alone for 5 years?" "More or less. I worked, data entry, something I could do from home when I felt okay, saw doctors, took medications, waited for a transplant list that kept getting longer." She looked at him directly. "And then my heart decided it was done waiting, started failing faster, and they moved me here 2 weeks ago and told me we were looking at weeks, maybe a month or two if I was lucky." The casual way she said it, weeks, maybe a month, made Mark's stomach turn. This woman, barely older than he was, calmly discussing her expiration date like it was a known fact instead of a devastating tragedy. "And no one's been to see you? In 2 weeks?" "You're the first." She gestured to the flowers on the windowsill. "Those are from the hospital auxiliary. They bring them to patients who don't get visitors, so we don't feel so pathetic." "Jesus, Evelyn. It's okay. I'd made peace with it. Decided that if I was going to die, at least I'd die quietly, without bothering anyone." Her eyes drifted to the girls, who were now arguing about whether the cartoon elephant was actually a boy or a girl. And then 3 beautiful, loud, completely unexpected children burst through my door and decided I was worth bothering with. Sophie looked up at the sound of her name, or maybe just at some sixth sense that they were being discussed. "We're not a bother," she announced. "Daddy says we're a blessing." "I say you're a handful," Mark corrected. "Daddy says we're a blessing," Sophie repeated with absolute confidence. "Even when we're a handful." Evelyn's laugh turned into another cough. Mark half rose, unsure what to do, but she waved him back. When she caught her breath, her eyes were wet. "You are a blessing," she said. "All 4 of you." The afternoon dissolved into that strange, suspended time that exists in hospital rooms. The girls eventually grew bored with cartoons and migrated to coloring, spreading out their supplies with the territorial intensity of small conquerors. They drew more pictures for Evelyn: animals, houses, fantastical creatures that might have been dragons or possibly very angry cats. Mark found himself talking about his business, about the girls, about the everyday mundane details of a life that probably sounded impossibly ordinary to someone whose world had contracted to this single room. But Evelyn listened like he was describing adventures in distant lands. "What's your favorite thing about being a dad?" she asked during a quiet moment when the girls were absorbed in their art. Mark considered this. The way they see the world. Everything's still possible for them. A stranger in a hospital bed isn't someone to fear or pity, she's just someone who needs friends. A wrong door isn't a mistake, it's an adventure. He paused. They haven't learned to be cynical yet. Haven't learned that some things are impossible or inappropriate or too hard. Like befriending a dying woman? Like that, yeah. I'm glad they haven't learned it. Evelyn's voice was quiet. I'm glad they still believe people are worth loving even when it's complicated. The words hung between them, meaning heavy. Mark realized with uncomfortable clarity that this wasn't just about the girls anymore. That somewhere in the last 24 hours, he'd started to care what happened to this stranger with her failing heart and empty room. We should probably go soon, he said, checking his phone. It's almost dinner time, and these three turn into gremlins when their blood sugar drops. We do not, Emma protested. You absolutely do, Mark said. Remember last week when you cried because your sandwich was cut in triangles instead of squares? Emma flushed. That was different. Triangles taste wrong. Evelyn laughed, and Mark caught himself smiling at the sound. It was getting stronger, that laugh. Less fragile. Like maybe, impossibly, she was actually getting better. Can we come back tomorrow? Lily asked, already packing up crayons with careful precision. Mark looked at Evelyn, letting her make the call. Please, she said, if it's not too much trouble. It's no trouble, he assured her, and meant it. Same time? I'll be here. A wry smile. Not like I have other plans. The girls said their goodbyes. Sophie with another enthusiastic hug, Emma with a solemn promise to bring a book tomorrow, Lily with the announcement that she'd pray for Evelyn's heart to get stronger. Thank you, Evelyn said as they prepared to leave. She was looking at Mark when she said it, not the girls. For coming back. For staying. For making this bearable. We're not doing anything special, Mark said, uncomfortable with her gratitude. You're here. That's everything. In the car, the girls chattered about tomorrow's visit, already planning what to bring, what to talk about, what games to play. Mark drove on autopilot, his mind elsewhere. He was thinking about a woman dying alone, about the fiancé who'd left when things got hard, about friends who'd faded away, about 2 weeks in a hospital bed with only nurses and doctors who were paid to care, about his own wife dying alone in a crumpled car. Daddy? Emma's voice broke through his thoughts. Are we going to keep visiting Evelyn every day? Do you want to? Yes, all three answered in unison. Even though she's very sick, Mark asked carefully. Even though she might not get better? Especially because she's sick, Sophie said with the clarity of absolute certainty. Because sick people need friends the most. Mark's throat tightened. Yeah, they do. That night, after the girls were asleep, Mark's mother called. So, Patricia said without preamble, tell me about this dying woman my granddaughters won't stop talking about. Mark sighed and filled her in. The accidental meeting, Evelyn's situation, the girls' immediate attachment, his own complicated feelings about bringing children into such a sad situation. You're worried about them getting hurt, Patricia said when he finished. Of course I'm worried. What happens when she dies, Mom? How do I explain to 3 6-year-olds that their new friend is gone? Haven't they dealt with enough death already? Maybe, Patricia said slowly, the question isn't whether they'll be hurt. The question is what they'll learn. I don't understand. Mark, honey, you can't protect them from death. Rachel's death already taught them that people leave. But maybe Evelyn can teach them something just as important, that people are worth loving anyway. That kindness matters even when the outcome is sad. That showing up for someone is valuable, even if you can't fix what's broken. Mark was quiet, letting her words settle. Besides, Patricia continued, sounds like that young woman needs you all, and sometimes being needed is just as important as being safe. They talked for another 20 minutes, about logistics, about boundaries, about how to handle the inevitable end when it came. Patricia, who'd buried her husband 10 years ago and helped bury her daughter-in-law 2 years back, knew about grief. She knew about staying present through the hard parts. Bring her soup, she advised before hanging up. Tomorrow, something hearty. Hospital food is terrible, and if she's rallying, she needs nutrition. Mom, I can't cook. Then buy soup, the good kind, not canned. And Mark? Yeah? You're doing the right thing, even if it's hard. Especially because it's hard. The next day, Mark showed up with containers of butternut squash soup from the deli that charged too much but made everything from scratch. The girls brought more drawings, more books, more of their relentless, exhausting energy. Evelyn ate half the soup, more than she'd eaten in days, according to Nurse Marie, and listened to Emma read from a picture book about a brave mouse. Sophie braided Evelyn's hair with the intense concentration she usually reserved for important artistic endeavors. Lily taught her a clapping game that made her breathless, but smiling. And Mark sat in his chair and watched this dying woman come alive under his daughter's attention. It became a routine. Every day after school, they'd stop by Memorial General. Sometimes they stayed for an hour, sometimes two. Mark brought food, soup, sandwiches, once a chocolate milkshake that made Evelyn laugh with delight. The girls brought their whole chaotic world, homework to work on, toys to share, an endless supply of stories and songs and games. Evelyn's room transformed, the sterile space filled with children's drawings taped to every available surface, get well cards the girls made at school, a stuffed animal Sophie insisted Evelyn needed for nighttime comfort, a small plant Lily picked out because rooms need living things. And slowly, impossibly, Evelyn got stronger. Not cured, not healthy, but stronger. She could sit up for longer periods, her color improved, her voice grew steadier. The doctors began using words like stable and rallying and remarkable improvement. It's not just coincidence, Dr. Reynolds told Mark one afternoon when he caught the cardiologist in the hallway. Emotional and psychological states have measurable impacts on cardiac function. Your visits are literally helping her heart work better. But it's temporary, right? Mark had to ask. She's still dying. Dr. Reynolds chose his words carefully. End-stage heart failure is complicated. Without a transplant, yes, the prognosis is grim. But patients who have strong social support, who have reasons to fight, they often exceed expectations. I've seen it before. Not miracles exactly, but extensions. Time that shouldn't exist, existing anyway. How much time? There's no way to know. Could be weeks, could be months, could be longer if we get lucky with a transplant match. But Mark? The doctor's expression turned serious. Don't build your hope on forever. Build it on today. Make today good for her. That's all any of us can really do. Mark carried those words with him as the days turned into a week, then two. He watched his daughters love Evelyn with the uncomplicated fierceness children brought to everything. Watched Evelyn bloom under that love like a plant finally getting water after a long drought. And somewhere along the way, Mark stopped thinking of her as the dying woman in room 407 and started thinking of her as Evelyn. As a person with a sharp wit and a gentle laugh, as someone who remembered which daughter liked which color, who asked about his day with genuine interest, who made him feel seen in ways he hadn't felt since Rachel died. It was during their third week of visits that Lily asked the question Mark had been dreading. Why can't Evelyn come home with us? They were in the cafeteria taking a break while Evelyn napped. The girls were working through ice cream cups with the single-minded focus of small sugar addicts. Because she needs to be in the hospital, Mark said carefully, where the doctors can take care of her. But she's getting better, Sophie chimed in. The nurse said so. She's doing better, yes, but... So she should come to our house, Emma finished. We have a spare room, the one that used to be Mommy's office. Mark's chest tightened. Rachel's office, which he'd left untouched for 2 years because he couldn't bear to pack up her things, to admit that she wouldn't be coming back to finish those half-written articles and abandoned research. It's not that simple, sweetie. Why not? Because Evelyn needs special care, medical equipment, nurses who know what they're doing. You know what you're doing, Lily said loyally. Not with heart failure, I don't. But she's lonely in the hospital, Sophie persisted. She told me. She said the nights are the worst because there's nobody to talk to and the machines are scary. The image of Evelyn alone in that room, surrounded by beeping monitors, staring at the ceiling through the long, dark hours, it hit Mark like a physical blow. I know she's lonely, but bringing her to our house, that's a big responsibility. It's not like having a friend over for dinner. She's very sick, and if something went wrong, Then we'd call 911, Emma said, with devastating practicality, like we learned in school. Mark looked at his three daughters, their faces sticky with ice cream and completely serious, and felt the full weight of what they were asking. What they didn't understand, what he couldn't quite explain, was that bringing Evelyn home meant admitting she mattered, meant crossing a line from charitable visitors to something more, meant opening their lives to someone who might not survive the year, meant risking their hearts on a love that came with an expiration date stamped right on it. "Let me think about it," he said finally. The girls accepted this with varying degrees of grace. Sophie pouted. Emma looked thoughtful. Lily just nodded like she'd expected nothing less. But as they headed back to Evelyn's room, Mark couldn't stop thinking about it. About the spare room. About his mother, who was a retired nurse. About the possibility of giving Evelyn something besides these sterile walls and institutional ceiling tiles. About what it might mean to choose love even when loss was guaranteed. Evelyn was awake when they returned, looking at something on her phone with a frown. "Everything okay?" Mark asked. She looked up, and he saw tears on her cheeks. "They're discharging me." The girls cheered, not understanding. Mark felt his stomach drop. "When?" "End of the week. They say I'm stable enough that I don't need acute care anymore. They want to move me to a hospice facility." Her voice cracked on the word hospice. "Where I can be, comfortable." "Where she could die," Mark translated. "In a place designed specifically for dying, with other people waiting for the same inevitable end." "That's good though, right?" he made himself say. "That you're stable?" "I guess." She wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. I thought I'd have more time here. More time with—" She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. More time with them. With the girls who'd given her a reason to keep fighting. With the family that had accidentally adopted her through a wrong turn and a half-open door. The girls climbed onto the bed, surrounding her with their small, warm bodies, and Mark watched Evelyn hold them like they were the most precious things in the world. And he made a decision that was probably crazy and definitely complicated and absolutely, certainly, the only thing he could do. "Don't go to hospice," he said. Evelyn looked up, confused. "What?" "Don't go to hospice. Come home with us." The words hung in the air. The girls went completely still, eyes wide. "Mark, I can't." "Why not? We have space. My mom's a retired nurse. She can help with medical stuff. The girls clearly want you there." He was talking faster now, working through objections before she could voice them. "You'd have your own room, your own space, but you wouldn't be alone. You'd be with people who care about you." "Mark, that's insane. You can't just take in a dying stranger." "You're not a stranger anymore." He said it simply because it was true. "You're our friend, and friends don't let friends die alone in hospice facilities when there's another option." Evelyn was crying openly now. "You don't understand what you're offering. I'm going to get worse. I'm going to need help with everything. Bathing, eating, medications. I'm going to be a burden, and when the end comes, it's going to be hard and sad, and your daughters will be there to see it." "I know," Mark said quietly. "I know all of that, and I'm still offering. Please come live with us." Shh. Sophie threw her arms around Evelyn's neck. "Please, please, please." "We need you," Lily added, her voice small but firm. "You're part of our family now," Emma said, like this explained everything. Evelyn looked at Mark over the tangle of small arms and bodies. "Why would you do this? Why would you risk hurting them like this?" Mark thought about his mother's words. About teaching his daughters that love mattered even when it was hard. About showing up for people even when you couldn't fix what was broken. "Because you matter," he said. "Because they're right. You're part of our family now. Because I spent 2 years being terrified of letting anyone in, of risking more loss, of opening our lives to more heartbreak. But you know what? We already care about you. The risk is already there, so we might as well go all in." "Mark?" "Say yes, Evelyn. Come home with us. Let us give you something better than a hospice bed. Let us be there for you the way you've been there for my daughters, giving them something to care about, teaching them about kindness, showing them what it means to love someone even when it's scary." Evelyn's face crumpled. For a long moment she couldn't speak. When she finally found words, they came out broken and whole at the same time. Okay, she whispered. Okay, yes, I'll come home with you. The girls erupted in cheers so loud that Nurse Marie stuck her head in to make sure everyone was all right. When Mark explained the plan, she smiled so wide it looked like it might split her face. Best medicine you could give her, Marie said. Love and laughter and a reason to wake up every morning. That's worth more than anything we can prescribe. The next few days were a blur of logistics. Consultations with doctors about in-home care. Calls to medical equipment companies about oxygen systems and hospital beds. Mark's mother coming over to assess what would be needed, making lists in her efficient nurse handwriting. You sure about this? Patricia asked him the night before Evelyn was due to be discharged. Not even a little bit, Mark admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. His mother hugged him hard. Your father would be proud. You're raising those girls to be brave and kind, even when it costs you. The day Evelyn came home, she cried when she saw what they'd done to the spare room. The girls had insisted on decorating, more drawings on the walls, flowers in a vase on the dresser. The stuffed rabbit Sophie had given her sitting prominently on the pillow of the hospital bed they'd rented. It's perfect, Evelyn whispered, taking it all in. It's yours, Mark said, for as long as you need it. For as long as you have, he didn't say. But they both heard it anyway. That night, they had dinner together. Take-out pizza because Mark still couldn't cook and nobody cared. The girls talked over each other, excited to show Evelyn everything, to bring her into their routines and rituals and daily chaos. And Evelyn laughed and cried and looked at Mark with eyes that said thank you, and I'm sorry, and I can't believe this is real all at once. Later, after the girls were in bed, Mark found her sitting in the living room, just looking around at the photos on the walls, the toys scattered across the floor, the lived-in mess of a house that was a home. You okay? He asked softly. I forgot what this felt like, she said. Being part of something, belonging somewhere, mattering to people. Mark sat beside her on the couch, careful to leave space between them, unsure of boundaries in this new configuration. You matter to us, he said. You have since the moment my daughters decided you needed them. Evelyn turned to look at him, really look at him, and Mark saw something shift in her expression, something that made his breath catch. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay. That morning, the morning your daughters walked into my room, I had decided to stop treatment. The words came out quiet but firm. I'd had enough. The pain, the loneliness, the endless waiting for an end that felt like it would never come. I was going to tell the doctors I was done, that they should just make me comfortable and let me go. Mark felt ice slide down his spine. Evelyn. But then 3 little girls burst through my door laughing, and Sophie climbed on my bed, and Emma took my hand, and Lily asked why I was alone. And I thought maybe I could last one more day, just to see if they came back. Her voice cracked. You saved my life, Mark. You and your daughters. You gave me a reason to keep fighting when I'd given up on reasons. Mark didn't think. He just reached out and took her hand, the same hand Emma had held that first day, and held it tight. I'm glad we walked through that door, he said roughly. I'm glad we got lost. I'm glad my daughters are too stubborn to understand appropriate boundaries. Evelyn laughed through her tears. Me too, even if this is temporary. Even if it ends badly, I'm glad too. They sat there in the quiet house, holding hands, 2 broken people who'd found each other through accident and grace, and 3 small girls who believed in love even when it was complicated. And outside, the world turned on, indifferent to small miracles. But inside, something new was growing, something fragile and fierce and worth fighting for, something that looked an awful lot like hope. The first week with Evelyn in the house felt like learning a new language, one composed of medication schedules, oxygen tank deliveries, and the peculiar rhythm of living alongside someone whose body was actively betraying them. Mark's mother came by every morning to help with the medical necessities he didn't know how to handle, teaching him to check vitals, adjust oxygen levels, recognize the signs that meant call the doctor versus the signs that meant call 911. You're doing fine, Patricia assured him on day 3, after he'd successfully managed Evelyn's morning medications without forgetting a single pill. Better than fine, actually. I mixed up the dosages yesterday, Mark said, exhausted in a way that went bone deep. Could have killed her. But you didn't. You caught it, double-checked, got it right. His mother squeezed his shoulder. Nobody expects you to be perfect at this, honey. Just present. And you're excelling at present. Present meant waking up at odd hours when he heard sounds from Evelyn's room, the rasp of difficult breathing, the soft crying she tried to muffle in her pillow. Present meant learning to cook actual meals because takeout every night wasn't sustainable and Evelyn needed nutrition. Present meant juggling his work schedule, the girls' school routine, and the constant low-grade anxiety that came with being responsible for someone's life. But present also meant watching Evelyn slowly unfold in their home like a flower that had been kept too long in darkness. She started venturing out of her room more, sitting on the couch to watch the girls play, joining them at the dinner table when she had the energy. The gray pallor that had defined her in the hospital began to recede, replaced by something that almost looked like health. "She's gaining weight," Patricia noted one morning, helping Evelyn back to bed after breakfast. "Not much, but it's there. And her color's better." Mark had noticed. He'd noticed everything about Evelyn lately, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how she closed her eyes when the girls sang to her, the small smile that played at her lips when she thought no one was watching. He'd noticed because somewhere in the chaos of medical equipment and meal planning, somewhere between administering pills and adjusting oxygen tubes, he'd started to feel things he had no business feeling, things that terrified him. It was Sophie who said it out loud first, the way children always seem to voice the truths adults tried to hide. "Daddy loves Evelyn," she announced at breakfast 2 weeks after Evelyn had moved in. Like, really loves her. Like the way Prince Charming loves Cinderella. Mark choked on his coffee. Evelyn, who'd been carefully eating oatmeal at the far end of the table, went absolutely still. "Sophie, that's not... We don't say things like that," Mark managed, his face burning. "Why not? It's true." Sophie looked genuinely confused. "You look at her the way you used to look at Mommy in the pictures, all soft and smiley." Emma and Lily exchanged glances, that twin telepathy thing they did that never failed to unnerve him. "We think you should marry her," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Then she could be our new mommy." The oatmeal spoon clattered against Evelyn's bowl. Mark felt the world tilt sideways. "Girls, that's not... Evelyn is our friend. She's staying with us because she needs help, not because we're not going to..." He was stammering, his carefully constructed boundaries crumbling under the assault of childish honesty. "But you do love her, right?" Lily pressed, her face serious. "Because if you don't, you're really good at pretending." Mark looked helplessly at Evelyn, who'd gone pale except for 2 bright spots of color on her cheeks. Their eyes met across the breakfast table, his panicked, hers unreadable, and something passed between them that made his chest ache. "I think," Evelyn said carefully, her voice barely above a whisper, "that your daddy is being kind to someone who needs kindness. That's different from the kind of love you're talking about." "No, it's not," Sophie said stubbornly. "I know what love looks like, and Daddy loves you." The silence that followed was excruciating. Mark wanted to sink through the floor, wanted to explain to his daughters about appropriate boundaries and complicated feelings, and how you couldn't just love someone who was dying because that way led to more heartbreak than any of them could handle. Wanted to tell them they were absolutely, devastatingly right. "Okay," he said finally, using his dad voice, the one that meant subject closed. "Enough. Evelyn is our friend and our guest. We care about her, yes, but talking about marriage and new mommies is inappropriate and hurtful. Understood?" 3 small faces looked mutinous but nodded. "Good. Now finish breakfast. We need to leave for school in 10 minutes. The ride to school was quieter than usual. The girls seemed to sense they'd crossed a line, though Mark suspected they'd cross it again the first chance they got. After drop-off, he sat in the parking lot for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel and trying to steady his breathing. Because the worst part wasn't that his daughters had embarrassed him. The worst part was that they were right. He was falling in love with Evelyn Carter. Had been falling probably since that first day when she'd held Emma's hand and smiled at Sophie's terrible drawing like it was the Mona Lisa. The fall had been gradual and then sudden, the way these things always were. A accumulation of small moments that added up to something terrifyingly large. The way she laughed at his terrible jokes, the patience she showed with the girls, even on her worst days. The vulnerability in her eyes when she let him help her with things she couldn't manage alone anymore. The quiet conversations they'd started having late at night, after everyone else was asleep, when she'd shuffle out to the living room and find him still awake, both of them too wired or worried or weighted down by their own thoughts to rest. He loved the sound of her voice, rough from medication and oxygen deprivation. Loved how she'd started leaving books she thought he'd like on the coffee table, sticky notes marking passages that made her think of him. Loved the way she'd become part of their family so seamlessly it was hard to remember what the house had felt like before she filled it with her quiet presence. And it was the worst possible timing, the most idiotic thing he could do. Because Evelyn was dying. Maybe slower than the doctors expected, maybe rallying in ways that gave false hope, but still dying. Her heart was failing. The transplant list was long and getting longer. Every good day was borrowed time. Loving her meant signing up for guaranteed loss. Meant putting his daughters through another death, another funeral, another gaping hole where a person used to be. Meant risking everything for someone he might only have for months. When he got home, Evelyn was in the living room, oxygen cannula in place, reading one of the books Emma had checked out from the library. She looked up when he entered, and the expression on her face told him she'd been dreading this conversation as much as he had. "I'm sorry," she said before he could speak. "About breakfast. The girls, they don't understand. They understand more than we give them credit for." Mark sat down heavily on the opposite end of the couch, maintaining careful distance. "Evelyn, we need to talk about boundaries." Her face fell. "You want me to leave?" "What? No, that's not—" He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "I don't want you to leave, but the girls are getting attached, really attached. And when you're talking about marriage and mommies, that's dangerous territory." "I know." Her voice was small. "I'll talk to them, explain that I'm just their friend, that I'm not replacing Rachel. That's not what I'm worried about." The words came out harsher than intended. "Rachel's been gone 2 years. The girls barely remember her some days, and that kills me. But it's reality. They're not looking for a replacement mom. They see someone they care about and they want to keep her. They don't understand that's not how this works." Evelyn's hands twisted in her lap. "How does it work, Mark?" "You're sick, really sick, and I know you're doing better now, but that doesn't change the fundamental reality. You're going to get worse. You're going to need more care, and eventually—" His voice cracked. He forced himself to continue. "Eventually, you're going to die. And my daughters are going to have to watch someone else they love leave them. I never wanted to hurt them. I know you didn't, but that doesn't change what's going to happen." He made himself look at her directly. "Maybe this was a mistake, bringing you here, getting this involved. Maybe I should have just visited you in the hospital and kept things surface level instead of—" "Instead of what?" Evelyn's voice had an edge now. "Instead of treating me like a human being? Instead of giving me the first real family I've had in 5 years? Instead of making me want to live instead of just existing until I die? I'm trying to protect them." "By what? By keeping them at arm's length from anyone who might leave? By teaching them that loving people is only safe if you're guaranteed forever?" Her eyes were bright with tears and fury. "That's not protection, Mark. That's just fear." The words hit him like a slap. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You lost Rachel. It destroyed you. And now you're so terrified of losing anyone else that you'd rather build walls than risk feeling that pain again." She was crying openly now, her breathing labored from the exertion of arguing. "But here's the thing. Your daughters aren't building walls. They're building love. They're choosing to care about me even though they know I'm sick. Even though they've already lost their mother. They're braver than you are. They're children. They don't understand consequences. Or maybe they understand something you've forgotten." Evelyn wiped angrily at her tears. "That love isn't about guarantees, that people are worth caring about even when you can't keep them forever, that showing up matters even when it hurts." Mark felt something crack open in his chest. All the careful control he'd been maintaining, all the boundaries he'd tried to establish, all the ways he'd been lying to himself about what this was, it shattered under the weight of her honesty. "I can't do this again," he whispered. "I can't watch someone I love die. I barely survived it the first time." The room went absolutely silent. Even Evelyn's ragged breathing seemed to pause. "Someone you love?" she repeated slowly. Mark closed his eyes. Yes, someone I love. Because my daughters were right, and I've been lying to myself for weeks, and this is exactly why I should have kept my distance. Mark, I'm falling in love with you, Evelyn. Have been, probably since you let Sophie climb on your hospital bed and didn't tell her to get down. And it's the stupidest thing I could possibly do because you're dying and I know you're dying, and loving you anyway it's just setting myself up for more grief. When he finally opened his eyes, Evelyn was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Shock, maybe, or horror, or pity. Say something, he said when the silence stretched too long. I don't know what to say. Her voice shook. I never expected. I thought you were just being kind, charitable. I never imagined you might actually feel something. Yeah, well, surprise. He laughed bitterly. The widower with 3 kids falls for the dying woman living in his spare room. It's like a tragic romance novel, except there's no happy ending. Just a funeral I'm going to have to plan while explaining to my daughters why another person they loved is gone. Stop it. Evelyn's voice was sharp. Stop talking about my death like it's the only thing that matters. Like these weeks we've had together, like what we've built here. Like all of it is meaningless because it has an expiration date. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Mark? She struggled to her feet, swaying slightly, and he instinctively moved to help her. She waved him off. Are you saying you wish you'd never met me? That you'd rather have left me alone in that hospital room to die without ever knowing what it felt like to be part of a family again? That these weeks of actually living instead of just waiting to die weren't worth the grief you'll feel when I'm gone? I'm saying I'm scared. The words burst out of him. I'm terrified, okay? I'm terrified of losing you. I'm terrified of hurting my daughters again. I'm terrified that I'm being selfish by wanting you here when I know how this ends. I'm terrified that I'm already in too deep to walk away, but still not brave enough to what? To love you the way you deserve to be loved. His voice broke. To give you everything I have while I still can instead of holding back because I'm afraid of the ending. To be present and honest and all in the way my daughters are, instead of constantly bracing for impact. Evelyn sank back onto the couch, her breathing ragged. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Mark could hear the oxygen machine humming, the clock ticking on the wall, his own heart hammering against his ribs. I'm scared too, Evelyn finally said. I'm scared of being a burden, of taking more than I can give, of letting your daughters love me when I know I'm going to break their hearts by leaving. She paused, gathering strength. And I'm scared of this, of what I feel for you, because I told myself I'd never let anyone in again after my fiancé left, that it was safer to be alone than to risk being abandoned when things got hard. But then you burst through my door chasing 3 crazy children, and you didn't run away when you saw how sick I was. You came back. You kept coming back, and now you've given me this. She gestured around the room, her voice breaking. This home. This family, this feeling of mattering to someone again. And I'm terrified because I don't deserve it. Don't say that. It's true though, isn't it? I'm dying, Mark. I have nothing to offer you but medical bills and grief. Your daughters are going to watch me deteriorate. They're going to see me get weaker, sicker, until one day I stop, and you're going to be left picking up the pieces, explaining why loving people sometimes means losing them. Tears streamed down her face. How can you say you love me when all I can give you is pain? Mark moved then, closing the distance between them without thinking. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his, those thin, cold hands that he'd held so many times while helping her to the bathroom, while steadying her during dizzy spells, while just being present in the darkness. You've given me more than you know, he said roughly. You've given my daughters purpose, joy. Someone to care for besides their exhausted father. You've given them lessons about kindness and resilience and showing up for people even when it's hard. He squeezed her hands gently. And you've reminded me that I'm not just a dad, that I'm still a person who can feel things, that my heart didn't die with Rachel, that I'm capable of more than just surviving. Mark, I know this is complicated. I know the timing is terrible. I know we're probably both crazy for even considering, for feeling. He stopped, made himself say it clearly. I love you, Evelyn, and I don't know what to do with that except tell you the truth and hope that's enough. She was crying harder now, her whole body shaking with it. I love you too, she whispered. I've been trying not to. Telling myself it wasn't fair to you, that I had no right to these feelings, when I can't promise you anything except heartbreak. But I love you. I love your daughters. I love this chaotic, beautiful life you've let me be part of. And I'm so sorry that loving me back means more loss. He pulled her into his arms then, carefully mindful of the oxygen line, of her fragile ribs, of all the ways her body was breaking down. She buried her face in his shoulder and sobbed, and he held her and let himself cry too. For Rachel, for the unfairness of loving someone whose time was running out, for his daughters who would have to learn again that love sometimes meant goodbye. They stayed like that until Evelyn's breathing grew too labored, until Mark eased her back against the couch and adjusted her oxygen flow. She looked exhausted, wrung out, but there was something different in her eyes now, something open and raw and honest. What do we do now? She asked quietly. Mark sat beside her, their hands still linked. I don't know. I've never been in love with someone who's dying before. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Not much of a market for it, I'd imagine. Terrible demographic. He managed a weak smile back. Limited growth potential. She laughed, then coughed, then laughed again. We're both terrible at this. Spectacularly bad, he agreed. Then more seriously. But maybe we can figure it out together. Take it day by day. I'm not asking you to promise me forever, Evelyn. I know we don't have forever, but maybe we can have today. And tomorrow. And however many days we get. Your daughters are going to love you whether we acknowledge these feelings or not. The damage is done, if you want to call it damage. They've already chosen you. The question is whether we're brave enough to choose each other. Evelyn closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were clear and determined. I want to be brave. I want to love you without apologizing for it. I want to be part of this family for however long I have. But Mark, you need to understand something. What? I'm going to get worse. The doctors gave me months, and that was before I started rallying. Maybe I have longer now. Maybe I don't. But eventually my heart is going to give out. And when that happens, it's going to be ugly and hard. And your daughters are going to see things children shouldn't see. Her voice was steady now, unflinching. If we do this, if we really do this, you need to go in with your eyes open. No false hope about miraculous recoveries or last-minute transplants. Just the reality of loving someone on borrowed time. Mark thought about his mother's words from weeks ago, about teaching his daughters that love mattered even when it was hard, about the value of showing up for people even when you couldn't fix what was broken. He thought about Emma holding Evelyn's hand that first day, Sophie climbing on the hospital bed, Lily asking why she was alone, 3 6-year-olds who'd looked at a dying stranger and decided she needed them, consequences be damned. Eyes open, he agreed. No false hope, just honesty and presence and making the most of whatever time we have. You're sure? Not even a little bit. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. But I'm doing it anyway. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat there in the quiet house, holding each other like anchors in a storm. That afternoon, when the girls came home from school, they found Mark and Evelyn on the couch together. Not touching inappropriately, not making grand announcements, just sitting close in a way they hadn't before. Something in the air had shifted. Sophie noticed first. Are you still mad about breakfast? Mark exchanged glances with Evelyn. No, sweetheart. We're not mad. Did you talk about the love thing? Emma asked bluntly. We talked, Evelyn confirmed. And we need to talk to you three as well. Come sit with us. The girls piled onto the couch, Sophie between Mark and Evelyn, Emma and Lily flanking the ends. A family meeting, though nobody called it that. You were right this morning, Mark started, because honesty seemed like the only way forward. I do love Evelyn, and she loves us too. All of us. The girls erupted in cheers that Mark quickly shushed. But we need you to understand something important. Evelyn is still very sick. Just because we love each other doesn't mean her heart is magically better. She's still going to need lots of medical care. She's still going to have bad days. And eventually, he paused, making sure he had their attention. Eventually, Evelyn is probably going to die. Her heart can't keep working forever, even with all the medicine and care. The girls went quiet. Sophie's lip trembled. But we love her anyway? Lily asked, her voice small. We love her anyway, Mark confirmed. Because love isn't about how long someone stays. It's about how we treat them while they're here. Like how we loved Mommy, Emma said softly. Even though she's gone now. Mark felt his throat close. Exactly like that. Evelyn spoke then, her voice gentle. I don't want you girls to be afraid of loving me because I might not be here forever, but I also don't want you to pretend I'm not sick. Sometimes I'm going to need help. Sometimes I'm going to have to rest when I wish I could play. And eventually, there might come a day when I have to go back to the hospital, and I might not come home again. We don't want you to die, Sophie said, tears spilling over. I know, baby. I don't want to die either, but sometimes our bodies stop working no matter how much we want them to keep going. Evelyn pulled Sophie into her lap, careful of her oxygen line. What I can promise you is that I'll be here as long as I can be. That I'll love you with everything I have, that every single day I'm with you is a gift I never expected to get. We'll take care of you, Emma said fiercely. We'll help Daddy. We'll be really good and quiet when you need to rest. You don't have to be quiet, Evelyn said, smiling through tears. Your noise is what keeps me fighting. Your laughter is better medicine than anything the doctors give me. They talked for another hour, the girls asking questions, Mark and Evelyn answering as honestly as they could without overwhelming them. Yes, Evelyn might need to go to the hospital sometimes. No, they didn't know exactly when she might die. Yes, it was okay to be sad and scared about that. Yes, they could still love her and have fun with her while also knowing that time was limited. It was the hardest conversation Mark had ever had with his daughters, harder even than telling them their mother was never coming home. Because this time, they were choosing grief, walking into it with eyes open, deciding that love was worth the inevitable loss. That night, after the girls were finally asleep, after extended bedtimes and extra stories and whispered reassurances, Mark found Evelyn in her room, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed and staring at her hands. You okay? He asked from the doorway. I keep thinking I should feel guilty, she said quietly, for letting your daughters love me when I know I'm going to hurt them. For letting you love me when you've already been through so much loss. But I can't make myself feel guilty because all of this, is the most alive I've felt in years. Mark crossed the room and sat beside her. My mother told me something a few weeks ago. She said sometimes being needed is just as important as being safe. That teaching the girls to love people even when it's risky is more valuable than protecting them from pain. Do you believe that? I'm starting to. He took her hand. And I keep thinking about what you said this morning, about my daughters being braver than me. They're not holding back. They're not calculating risk. They're just loving you because you're lovable. Maybe that's what I need to do too. Evelyn turned to face him fully. So what does that look like? You and me? How does this work? I have no idea, he admitted. I haven't dated anyone since Rachel, haven't even thought about it. And this isn't exactly conventional circumstances. No pressure or anything, she said wryly. Just a dying woman, 3 kids, and a widower who hasn't processed his grief. When you put it that way, it sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. Maybe it is. She leaned her head on his shoulder. But maybe disasters are just love stories that haven't found their ending yet. Mark pressed a kiss to the top of her head, breathing in the scent of hospital shampoo and something uniquely her. Then let's write a good middle. However long we have, let's make it count. Deal, she whispered. They sat there in this quiet, in the room that had been Rachel's office and was now Evelyn's space, and Mark let himself feel the full weight of what they were choosing. Not forever. Not certainty. Just presence and honesty and the terrifying vulnerability of loving someone when you knew exactly how much losing them would cost. But as Evelyn's breathing evened out against his shoulder, as the house settled into nighttime rhythms around them, Mark thought maybe his daughters had been right all along. Maybe the wrong door had led exactly where he needed to be. Maybe love didn't need guarantees to be worth the risk. And maybe, just maybe, borrowed time was still time worth living. The weeks that followed their conversation felt like living in a snow globe, beautiful and fragile and existing slightly apart from the real world. Mark went to work during the day while his mother stayed with Evelyn and the girls were at school. He came home to find dinner waiting, his mother's doing, not his, and evenings that stretched into something that almost looked like normal family life. Except normal families didn't have oxygen tanks in the corner. Normal families didn't organize their schedules around medication times and cardiology appointments. Normal families didn't wake up in the middle of the night to check if everyone was still breathing, but they found their rhythm anyway. The girls would do homework at the kitchen table while Evelyn watched from the couch, offering help when she had the energy. Mark would cook, badly, but improving, while Sophie narrated every single thought that crossed her 6-year-old mind. They'd eat together, talk about their days, pretend that the hospital bed in the spare room was just furniture instead of a constant reminder of mortality. And late at night, after the girls were asleep, Mark and Evelyn would sit together in the living room and just exist in each other's presence. Sometimes they talked about his childhood, her parents who'd died too young, the lives they'd imagined for themselves before tragedy rewrote the script. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, both of them acutely aware that every moment was borrowed. Mark had never told Evelyn he loved her out loud again after that day on the couch. The words felt too heavy, too loaded with implications he didn't know how to navigate. But he showed her in other ways, in the care he took preparing foods that wouldn't upset her sensitive stomach, in the way he'd learned to adjust her oxygen without being asked, in the books he'd leave on her nightstand because they reminded him of her. And Evelyn showed him too, in the way she'd save her limited energy for when the girls came home from school, rallying so she could be present for them. In the small touches she'd sneak when no one was watching, her hand on his arm, her fingers brushing his as they passed dishes at dinner. In the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention, like he was something miraculous instead of just a man doing his best not to fall apart. His mother noticed, of course. Patricia noticed everything. "You're holding back," she said one morning while they were changing Evelyn's bedding. Evelyn was in the shower, a process that required Mark's mother's assistance and took most of her energy for the day. "I don't know what you mean," Mark said, focusing intently on hospital corners. "Yes, you do. You love her. She loves you. But you're both tiptoeing around it like if you acknowledge it too directly, it'll become real and breakable." "It is breakable, Mom. She's dying." "Everyone's dying, honey, just at different speeds." Patricia smoothed the sheets with practiced efficiency. "But you're so busy protecting yourself from the ending that you're not fully living the middle." "That's not... I'm here, aren't I? I'm taking care of her, the girls, managing everything." "You're performing caretaking. That's different from being present." His mother stopped, met his eyes. "When was the last time you told her you loved her?" Mark felt heat creep up his neck. "I show her every day." "That wasn't my question. Words are complicated." "No, Mark. Words are simple. It's the fear that makes them complicated." Patricia's voice softened. "You're terrified that if you say it too much, mean it too deeply, the grief will be worse when she's gone. But here's what I learned when your father died. I never once regretted telling him I loved him. Not once. What I regretted were the times I held back because I was tired or distracted or taking tomorrow for granted. Dad wasn't dying at 30. No. But he was still mortal, and I still wish I'd said it more, meant it louder, shown him every single day that he was my whole world." She squeezed Mark's shoulder. "Don't let fear make you silent, honey. Evelyn needs to hear it, and you need to say it." That conversation haunted Mark for days. He'd catch himself watching Evelyn, laughing at something Sophie said, helping Emma with a math problem, letting Lily braid her hair into elaborate styles, and the words would rise up in his throat. "I love you, I love you, I love you." But they'd stick there, trapped behind the fear that speaking them out loud would make losing her even more devastating. It was Evelyn who finally forced the issue. They were sitting on the back porch one evening in early summer, watching fireflies emerge in the twilight. The girls were inside watching a movie with Patricia, giving Mark and Evelyn a rare moment of privacy. She'd been quiet all day, more withdrawn than usual, and Mark had learned to recognize the signs of a bad pain day. "You okay?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Define okay." She smiled wryly. My heart's failing, I can barely walk to the bathroom without getting winded, and I had to nap 3 times today. But I'm alive, and the sunset's beautiful, and I can hear your daughters laughing inside. So maybe I'm okay in the ways that matter. Mark took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Her hand was always cold now, circulation failing along with everything else. He rubbed his thumb across her knuckles, trying to warm her. "Mark," she said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you regret it, bringing me here?" The question hit him like a fist. "What? No, why would you?" "Because it's hard. I know it is. Your whole life revolves around my medical needs now. Your mother's here constantly. You can barely work. The girls see me struggling and it scares them." Her voice cracked. "Sometimes I think you'd all be better off if I'd just gone to hospice. If you'd visited sometimes but kept your distance. If I hadn't become this burden on your whole family." "Stop." Mark turned to face her fully. "You are not a burden. You've never been a burden." "Then why won't you talk to me?" The words burst out of her. "Really talk to me, not just logistics about medications and doctor appointments. Why won't you tell me what you're feeling? Why do you hold back like if you get too close, I might break?" "Because you might." The admission tore out of him. "Because every day I'm terrified I'm going to wake up and you'll be gone. Because loving you is the scariest thing I've ever done, and I don't know how to do it without constantly bracing for impact." "So you just, what, keep me at arm's length emotionally while taking care of me physically? Love me in theory but not in practice? That's not fair. It's completely fair." Tears streamed down her face. "I'm dying, Mark. We both know it. The doctors know it. Your daughters know it. And we've all made peace with that reality except you. You're still trying to protect yourself by not going all in, by saving the depths of your feelings for after I'm gone, when it's safe to feel them." Mark felt like she'd reached into his chest and pulled out his heart. "I'm trying to survive this. When you're gone, I still have to be a father. I still have to function. If I let myself love you with everything I have, if I stop holding anything back, how am I supposed to live?" Evelyn finished for him. "You're supposed to live, Mark. Fully, messily, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." She gripped his hand tighter. "I don't want careful love. I don't want you rationing your feelings like they're a limited resource you need to preserve. I want all of you. Your fear, your grief, your hope, your honesty. I want you to tell me you love me and mean it so deeply it terrifies you, because that's what I'm giving you, all of me, even the broken parts, and I deserve the same in return." The words hung in the night air between them. A firefly landed on the porch railing, its light pulsing in the gathering dark. "I'm afraid," Mark whispered. "I'm so afraid of losing you that I can barely breathe sometimes." "I know." Her voice gentled. "I'm afraid too. Afraid of leaving you. Afraid of hurting the girls. Afraid that these months we've had will be all we ever get. But Mark, being afraid doesn't mean we shut down. It means we love harder. We say the words. We make the moments count. We stop waiting for the perfect time because there is no perfect time when you're dying." Mark looked at this woman who'd come into his life through accident and chaos, who'd transformed from stranger to family in the space of a wrong turn and an open door. Her hair was thinner now from medication. Her skin stretched tight over bones that showed too clearly. Her breathing was labored even with the oxygen. She was dying, visibly and undeniably dying, and she was the most alive person he knew. "I love you," he said, and this time he didn't hold back. Didn't ration or protect or save anything for later. "I love you so much it terrifies me. I love the way you listen to Sophie's rambling stories like they're the most important thing you've ever heard. I love how you help Emma with homework even when you're exhausted. I love that you let Lily braid your hair into ridiculous styles and wear them proudly. I love your strength and your vulnerability and the way you've become part of our family like you've always belonged here." Evelyn was crying openly now, but she was smiling too. "I love that you read the books I leave for you and leave notes in the margins telling me what you thought," Mark continued, the words pouring out now. "I love your terrible jokes and your unexpected laugh, and the way you still try to help with dinner even though standing at the counter for 5 minutes winds you. I love that you've taught my daughters what real courage looks like. Not fearlessness, but choosing to love and live even when you're scared. I love every moment I've had with you, and I'm going to love you until the very end, and probably long after that. Mark, and I'm sorry I held back. Sorry I was too afraid to say it, to show you how completely you've changed everything. You're right, I was rationing my feelings, trying to protect myself from grief. But that's not fair to you. That's not fair to what we have. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs wiping away tears. So here it is, no holding back. I love you, Evelyn Carter, completely, messily, with everything I have. She kissed him then, her lips cold and dry from medication, the oxygen cannula in the way, neither of them caring. It was their first real kiss, and it tasted like tears and desperation and a love that refused to be sensible. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard for different reasons, Evelyn pressed her forehead against his. I love you too, she whispered. I need you to know that. When I'm gone, don't. When I'm gone, she continued firmly, I need you to remember that these months with you and the girls have been the happiest of my life. That you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, a family, a home, a reason to fight. That loving you wasn't a burden or a complication. It was the best thing I ever did. They sat there on the porch as night fell completely, holding each other and crying, and finally, being completely honest about what they were to each other. The next morning, Mark woke to find Evelyn in the kitchen. This alone was remarkable. She rarely had the energy to leave her room before noon. But there she was, oxygen tank trailing behind her, attempting to make pancakes with Emma's help. You should be resting, Mark said, immediately moving to take over. I wanted to do something normal. Evelyn flipped a pancake with shaky hands. Something that wasn't about being sick or dying or managing symptoms. Just making breakfast for people I love. The pancakes were terrible, burnt on one side, raw in the middle. The girls ate them anyway, drowning them in syrup and declaring them the best pancakes ever. Evelyn beamed like she'd created a masterpiece. After breakfast, while his mother helped Evelyn back to bed for a much-needed rest, Sophie approached Mark with the serious expression that meant she'd been thinking. Daddy, when are you going to marry Evelyn? Mark nearly dropped the dish he was washing. Sophie, we've talked about this. It's not that simple. But you love her. She loves you. That's what people do when they love each other. They get married. Usually, yes. But Evelyn is very sick, and planning a wedding is a big thing that takes time. We don't have time, Sophie said with devastating practicality. She's dying. You said so. So if you're going to marry her, you have to do it soon or it'll be too late. Out of the mouths of babes, Mark thought for the 1,000th time. His 6-year-old daughter had just articulated what he'd been avoiding thinking about. Would you want me to marry Evelyn? He asked carefully. Yes. All 3 girls responded at once. They'd clearly been discussing this. Even though she might not be here for very long? Even though, Emma confirmed, she should be part of our family for real, not just living here. Actually ours. Mark looked at his daughters, these fierce, brave, impossibly wise little girls who decided that love mattered more than longevity, that committing to someone was worth it even when forever wasn't guaranteed. Let me think about it, he said, which was dad code for yes, I'm going to do this terrifying thing because you're absolutely right. That night, after the girls were asleep, Mark sat in his bedroom staring at the small velvet box he'd retrieved from the back of his closet. Rachel's engagement ring, the one he'd planned to be buried with her but couldn't quite let go of at the funeral. A simple gold band with a small diamond, nothing fancy, but it had meant everything once. Was it wrong to give it to Evelyn? To offer her a ring that symbolized a love that had ended in tragedy? Or would it be meaningful, a way of honoring what he'd had with Rachel while acknowledging what he'd found with Evelyn? He was still debating when his mother knocked softly and entered without waiting for permission. Can't sleep? She asked, thinking about doing something crazy. Patricia sat on the edge of the bed. Does this crazy thing involve a certain young woman currently sleeping in your guest room? Mark opened the box, showed her the ring. The girls think I should marry her, Sophie especially, says we're running out of time for me to be indecisive. His mother smiled. Sophie's not wrong. What do you think? I think it's insane. I think Evelyn might say no because she won't want to burden me with being a widower twice. I think I'm terrified and unsure, and this is possibly the worst idea I've ever had. He paused. And I think I'm going to do it anyway. Rachel would approve, you know. Patricia touched the ring gently. She'd want you to love again, to be happy, to give the girls a mother, even if that mother can't stay forever. You think so? I know so. That girl loved you with everything she had, Mark. She'd hate seeing you alone and afraid. She'd tell you to take the risk, love the person, make the most of whatever time you have. His mother's eyes were wet. And I think Evelyn would be honored to wear this ring, not as a replacement for Rachel, but as a continuation of the love this family is capable of. Mark closed the box, held it tight. How do I even ask? Hey, I know you're dying, but want to get married anyway? It sounds ridiculous. Love always sounds ridiculous when you try to make it logical. Patricia stood, kissed his forehead like he was still a child. Ask from the heart. Be honest. Let her decide. But Mark? Yeah? Don't wait too long. Sophie's right about running out of time. 3 days later, Mark asked his mother to take the girls out for ice cream after dinner. He told Evelyn he wanted to show her something, helped her outside to the backyard where he'd strung up lights and laid out blankets on the grass. What's all this? Evelyn asked, lowering herself carefully onto the blankets with Mark's help. Something I should have done weeks ago. His heart was hammering so hard he could barely hear himself think. I've been thinking about what you said, about not holding back, about living fully even when it's scary. Mark, you don't have to... Let me finish. He took her hands, those cold, fragile hands that he'd held through hospital visits and bad nights, and ordinary moments that had become extraordinary. When I first met you, you were just the dying woman in the wrong hospital room. Then you became our friend. Then you became the person who made our house feel like a home again. And now you're everything. You're the first thought I have when I wake up and the last thought before I sleep. You're the reason I'm not just surviving anymore, but actually living. Evelyn's eyes were wide, her breathing shallow. What are you saying? Mark pulled out the ring box, his hands shaking. I'm saying that I don't want to waste whatever time we have being careful or protected or holding anything back. I'm saying that you belong with us, not as a guest or a friend, but as family, as my partner, as their mother, if you'll have the job. He opened the box, and Evelyn gasped. Is that Rachel's ring? It was Rachel's, but I'd like it to be yours now, if you'll accept it. Mark's voice cracked. I know the timing is terrible. I know we might only have months or weeks or days. I know this is completely insane by any rational standard. But Evelyn Carter, will you marry me? Will you let me love you completely for however long we have? Will you be my wife and their mother and part of this family in every way that matters? Tears streamed down Evelyn's face. Mark, I'm dying. You'd be signing up to be a widower again, to plan another funeral, to explain to your daughters. I know all of that. I'm asking anyway. But you're giving me Rachel's ring, the ring you gave to your first love. Because you're my second love, and Rachel would want this. She'd want me to be happy. She'd want the girls to have someone who loves them the way you do. She'd want me to take the risk instead of playing it safe. He moved closer, still holding the ring. This isn't about replacing her. It's about honoring what she taught me. That love is always worth it, even when it's temporary. That people are worth choosing, even when choosing them means eventual grief. That being afraid is okay, but letting fear make your decisions is not. Evelyn looked at the ring, then at Mark, then back at the ring. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Your daughters deserve a mother who can be there for them, who can go to school plays and graduations and weddings. I can't promise any of that. They don't need promises. They need someone who loves them right now, today, with everything she has. And that's you, Evelyn. You show up for them every single day despite being exhausted and in pain. You help with homework when you can barely sit up. You listen to their stories and wipe their tears and make them feel seen and valued. You're already their mother in every way that matters. I'm just asking to make it official. I could die next week. You could. Or you could live for years. We don't know. But I'd rather be married to you for a week than spend years wondering what if I'd been brave enough to ask. She laughed through her tears. You're crazy. You know that, right? This is the most insane thing anyone's ever asked me. Is that a no? It's a. She paused, looking at him with eyes full of love and fear and desperate hope. It's a yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll be your wife for however long I have. Yes to all of it, even though it's crazy and temporary and probably going to break all our hearts. Mark slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along, and kissed her with fireflies dancing around them and stars emerging overhead, and the whole world feeling like it had conspired to give them this one perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, both crying and laughing, Evelyn held up her hand to watch the small diamond catch the light. I can't believe you asked me with Rachel's ring, she said softly. I can't believe you said yes. Your daughters are going to lose their minds. Completely. Sophie will probably start planning the wedding before we even tell her. Evelyn's expression turned serious. Mark, I need you to understand something. I can't do a big wedding. I don't have the energy for planning and fittings and all of that. If we're doing this, we'll do it simple, small, whatever you can handle. He kissed her forehead. I don't need a big production. I just need you. How small are we talking? Mark thought about it. How about next weekend? Just us, the girls, my mom, maybe a few close friends, something intimate and quick before you can change your mind. I'm not going to change my mind. Then marry me next weekend. Let's not waste time planning something elaborate when we could just be married instead. She laughed, that beautiful sound that he'd come to treasure. You really are determined to do everything backward, aren't you? Meeting in a hospital room, moving in together before dating, getting engaged before I've even met most of your family. Works for us though, doesn't it? Somehow, impossibly, yes. She leaned against him, exhausted from the emotion and exertion. A week from now, I'll be Evelyn Holloway. Evelyn Holloway, Mark repeated, testing it out. I like it. Me too. She yawned, fighting to keep her eyes open. Should we tell the girls now or wait until morning? Let's tell them now. They'll never forgive us if we wait. When his mother brought the girls home 20 minutes later, they found Mark and Evelyn still in the backyard, wrapped in blankets and waiting. The girls took one look at Evelyn's hand, at the ring-catching moonlight, and erupted in screams of joy that probably woke the neighbors. Sophie launched herself at Evelyn with such force Mark had to steady them both. You're getting married! You're going to be our real mom! I'm already your real mom, Evelyn said, holding Sophie tight. The wedding just makes it official. Emma and Lily piled on, creating a tangle of arms and legs and tears and laughter. Patricia stood to the side, her own tears streaming down her face as she watched her son choose love over fear, watched these three little girls claim their new mother, watched a dying woman become part of a family that had decided she was worth every heartbreak that might follow. When's the wedding? Lily asked practically. Next weekend, Mark said. Small ceremony, just family and a few friends, nothing fancy, just us making a promise to each other. Can we be flower girls? Sophie asked, already mentally planning her dress. Absolutely, all three of you. I need to get my hair done, Emma announced, and we need to pick flowers and decorate and… Or, Evelyn interrupted gently, we could keep it simple. Backyard wedding, your grandma makes some food, you three wear your Sunday dresses, nothing stressful, just celebrating. The girls looked mutinous for a moment, clearly having envisioned something more elaborate. But then they looked at Evelyn, really looked at her, saw the exhaustion pulling at her features, the way she was already sagging against Mark despite the joy in her eyes, and their expressions softened. Simple is good, Sophie declared, as long as there's cake. There will definitely be cake, Mark promised. That night, after the girls were finally asleep, after the excited planning and the countless questions and the joy that had filled every corner of the house, Mark helped Evelyn back to her room. She was completely spent, barely able to stand, but she was smiling. Thank you, she whispered as he helped her into bed, adjusted her oxygen, checked that everything was within reach. For what? For being brave enough to ask, for not letting fear win, for giving me this… She gestured vaguely, encompassing the house, the family, the future they were claiming despite its uncertainty. I never thought I'd get married. Never thought anyone would want me like this, broken and dying and complicated. You're not broken, Mark said fiercely. You're fighting the hardest battle anyone could fight, and you're doing it with grace and courage and love. You're the strongest person I know. I'm terrified. Me too, but we're terrified together. He kissed her gently. Get some rest. In a week, you're going to be my wife, and I'm going to spend every day after that making sure you know how loved you are. As he turned to leave, Evelyn caught his hand. Mark? I love you so much it scares me, so much I can't quite believe it's real. It's real, he assured her, the most real thing I've ever felt. Now sleep. Dream about dancing at our wedding. I probably won't be able to dance. Then dream about me dancing with the girls while you watch and laugh at how terrible I am at it. She smiled sleepily. That sounds perfect. Mark stood in the doorway long after her breathing evened out, watching this woman who'd agreed to marry him despite everything, who'd chosen to love his daughters knowing she might not see them grow up, who'd walked into his life through a wrong door and changed absolutely everything. 1 week until the wedding, 1 week until they made it official, 1 week until Evelyn became his wife and the girl's mother in the eyes of the law and the world. And however much time they had after that, weeks, months, years if they were impossibly lucky, he was going to make sure she never doubted for a second how completely devastatingly loved she was. Because that's what you did when you loved someone on borrowed time. You loved them anyway. You loved them harder. And you didn't waste a single moment wishing for guarantees when presence was the only promise that mattered. The week before the wedding passed in a blur of preparations that were somehow both frantic and intimate. Patricia took charge of logistics with military efficiency, calling a friend who was a judge, ordering a simple cake from the bakery, arranging for chairs in the backyard. The girls insisted on hand-making decorations, which meant the house was soon covered in paper flowers and glitter that Mark would probably still be finding years from now. Evelyn had good days and bad days. On the good days, she'd sit on the couch and help the girls with their flower making, laughing at their serious dedication to getting every petal perfect. On the bad days, she could barely leave her bed, and Mark would find the girls quietly slipping into her room to sit with her, reading books, or just holding her hand in companionable silence. I'm sorry, Evelyn whispered to him on one particularly rough night 3 days before the wedding. She'd had a bad episode, her heart racing irregularly, pain so intense she couldn't hide it, breathing that scared even Mark's mother. Maybe we should postpone. I don't want to collapse during my own wedding. Then we'll get married in your room, Mark said simply. The judge can come here. The girls can surround your bed. We'll say our vows while you're lying down if that's what it takes. That's not how weddings are supposed to go. Since when have we done anything the way it's supposed to go? He kissed her forehead gently. I don't care about the setting, Evelyn. I care about the promise. And I'm making that promise whether you're standing up or lying down or somewhere in between. She cried then, but she was smiling too. How did I get so lucky? Finding you, finding them, finding this family. We're the lucky ones, Mark said firmly. You gave us something we didn't even know we were missing. You made us whole again. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and warm, with the kind of golden sunlight that made everything look like a painting. Mark woke early, nerves and excitement warring in his stomach. He checked on Evelyn, still sleeping, her breathing steady, and allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe today would be one of her good days. Maybe the universe would give them this one gift. His mother arrived at 7, already in full nurse mode. Let's get her up slowly, Patricia said. Make sure she eats something, stays hydrated. We'll do a full check of her vitals, adjust medications if needed. By 8, Evelyn was awake and surprisingly alert. The girls burst into her room with barely contained excitement, carrying the dress they'd helped pick out. A simple cream-colored sundress that wouldn't require elaborate effort to put on, but was still beautiful in its simplicity. You're getting married today, Sophie announced, bouncing on her toes. To our daddy. You're going to be our mom for real. I'm already your mom for real, Evelyn said, pulling Sophie into a hug. But yes, today makes it official. The morning was a chaos of hair brushing and nail painting, and the girls insisting Evelyn needed makeup even though she barely wore any. Patricia managed it all with calm efficiency, helping Evelyn get dressed, doing her hair in a simple style that wouldn't tire her out, making sure she was comfortable and steady. Mark wasn't allowed to see her, The girls insisted on at least this one tradition, so he spent the morning setting up chairs in the backyard, arranging flowers that a friend had donated, trying not to think about all the ways this day could go wrong. His heart could fail. She could be too exhausted to stand. She could realize that marrying a widower with 3 kids while dying was too much and call it off. "Stop spiraling," his mother said, finding him obsessively straightening chairs that didn't need straightening. "She's not going anywhere." "Well, she is, eventually, but not today. Today she's marrying you." "What if she's too sick? What if this is too much for her?" "Then we'll adapt. We always do." Patricia squeezed his arm. "But Mark, she's having a good day. Better than good, actually. I think she's rallying for this." And she was. When Evelyn emerged from the house 2 hours later, supported by Patricia on one side and Emma on the other, Mark forgot how to breathe. She looked ethereal in the cream dress, her dark hair catching the sunlight, her face thin but radiant with joy. The oxygen cannula was still in place. There was no hiding that, but somehow it didn't detract from her beauty. It was just part of who she was, part of the reality they were all choosing to embrace. The ceremony was small and perfect. Just Mark's mother, 2 of his closest friends from work, a neighbor who'd been bringing casseroles since Evelyn moved in, and the 3 girls who served as flower girls and audience and the world's most enthusiastic cheerleaders all at once. The judge was a kind woman in her 60s who'd been friends with Patricia for 30 years and had agreed to perform the ceremony with warmth and understanding. "We're gathered here today," the judge began, "to witness the marriage of 2 people who've proven that love doesn't need perfect circumstances, only brave hearts." Mark held Evelyn's hands, those cold, fragile hands, and tried to memorize every detail. The way the sunlight caught in her hair, the trembling smile on her lips, the tears already gathering in her eyes, the girls standing to the side holding bouquets of wildflowers and looking so proud it made his chest ache. The vows were simple. Traditional words about sickness and health, better and worse, richer and poorer. Words that took on devastating new meaning when you were marrying someone whose sickness was terminal, whose worse was guaranteed, whose time was measured in moments instead of years. When it came time for Mark to speak, his voice cracked. "I, Mark, take you, Evelyn, to be my wife, to love and to cherish, in sickness and in health, for as long as we both shall live." The last words caught in his throat because they both knew exactly how long that would be. Not nearly long enough. Evelyn's vows were steadier, though tears streamed down her face. "I, Evelyn, take you, Mark, to be my husband, to love and to cherish, in sickness and in health, for as long as we both shall live. And I promise to love your daughters as my own, to be present for them even when I can't be here, to teach them that love is always worth the risk." The girls were crying. Patricia was crying. Mark was definitely crying. Even the judge had to pause to compose herself. When the rings were exchanged, Rachel's ring for Evelyn, a simple gold band Mark had bought 3 days ago for himself, something shifted in the air. A sense of rightness, of pieces falling into place, of a family that had been fractured becoming whole again in an entirely new configuration. "By the power vested in me by the state," the judge said, her voice warm with emotion, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mark, you may kiss your bride." Mark kissed Evelyn gently, mindful of the oxygen line, of her fragility, of the preciousness of this moment. The small gathering erupted in applause. The girls rushed forward, wrapping themselves around Mark and Evelyn in a group hug that nearly knocked everyone over. "We're a family now," Sophie declared. "For real forever." Not forever, Mark thought, but didn't say. But for now. For today. For however long we get. The reception was simple, cake and punch in the backyard, conversations that flowed easily, laughter that came naturally. Evelyn managed to stay upright for almost an hour before exhaustion began pulling at her features. Mark saw it immediately and guided her to a chair, then knelt beside her. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "More than okay." She touched his face with wonder. "I'm married. To you. I'm actually married." "You are. Mrs. Holloway." He tested the name, loved the sound of it. "How does it feel?" "Like I'm dreaming, and I'm terrified I'll wake up." She leaned her forehead against his. "Thank you for this." for everything, for making me feel like I matter. You've always mattered, from the first moment." They stayed like that while the party continued around them, Mark kneeling beside his wife's chair, their foreheads pressed together, both crying and smiling and holding on to each other like anchors in a storm. The girls insisted on a first dance, even though Evelyn could barely stand. Mark lifted her carefully, supporting most of her weight, and they swayed in place to music playing from someone's phone. It wasn't elegant or graceful, it was slow and careful, and Evelyn was trembling with effort, but it was theirs. "I wish I could really dance with you," Evelyn whispered against his chest. "Wish I had the energy to do this properly." "This is properly. This is perfect. You, me, our daughters watching. Nothing else matters." When the song ended, Mark carried Evelyn inside. She protested weakly but didn't have the strength to insist on walking, and settled her on the couch. The girls piled around her, still in their fancy dresses, chattering about the wedding and the cake and how pretty everything had been. "Best day ever," Emma declared. "Best day ever," Evelyn agreed, though Mark could see exhaustion pulling at every line of her body. The guests left slowly, offering congratulations and well wishes and carefully neutral expressions that said they all knew this marriage came with an expiration date. Patricia was the last to go, kissing both Mark and Evelyn on the forehead and promising to come back tomorrow to help. "You did good, honey," she told Mark quietly. "Both of you did good." That night, after the girls were finally asleep, after they'd been promised they could have a sleepover in Evelyn's room tomorrow, after the last excited recounting of the day's events, Mark helped Evelyn to bed. Not her hospital bed in the guest room, but his bed. Their bed now. "Is this okay?" he asked as he settled her against the pillows, adjusted her oxygen, made sure everything was within reach. "I can sleep on the couch, if you need space." "Don't you dare!" She caught his hand. "We're married now. We sleep in the same bed." So they did. Mark held her carefully, terrified of hurting her, acutely aware of every breath she took. Evelyn curled against his chest, her hand over his heart, her breathing slowly evening out as sleep claimed her. "I love you," Mark whispered into the darkness. "My wife. My Evelyn." She didn't respond, already asleep, but her hand tightened slightly over his heart. And that was answer enough. The weeks that followed the wedding were the happiest and hardest of Mark's life. Happy because he'd never felt more complete, more certain that he was exactly where he needed to be. Hard because Evelyn's health began declining in ways that were impossible to ignore. The good days became fewer and farther between. The bad days stretched longer, filled with pain and breathlessness and exhaustion so profound she could barely keep her eyes open. Mark watched helplessly as the woman who'd been gaining strength just months ago began losing ground again, her body finally succumbing to what medicine couldn't fix. Dr. Reynolds was honest when he came for a home visit 6 weeks after the wedding. Her heart's giving out faster now. The rally she had was real, but it couldn't last forever. We're looking at weeks, Mark. Maybe days if she declines rapidly. What can we do? Keep her comfortable. Keep her loved. That's all anyone can do at this point. The doctor's expression was kind. But Mark? She's exceeded every expectation. Patients in her condition usually don't last this long. The fact that she's still here, still conscious, still able to interact with your family, that's remarkable. Whatever you're all doing, it's giving her reasons to fight. After the doctor left, Mark sat beside Evelyn's bed and took her hand. She was awake but weak, her breathing labored even with increased oxygen. "I heard," she said quietly. "Weeks, maybe days. We don't know that for sure. Doctors have been wrong before in—" "Mark," her voice was gentle but firm. "We both know I'm dying. We've always known. The question isn't if, it's when. And it sounds like when is coming sooner than we hoped." He couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. "I need to talk to the girls," Evelyn continued. "Really talk to them. Help them understand what's coming. I don't want them to be blindsided. They're 6 years old. They're 6 years old and they've already lost one mother. They deserve honesty about losing another one." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please, Mark, I need to do this while I still can. While I still have the strength to tell them I love them and help them understand it's not their fault." So that afternoon, they gathered the girls on Evelyn's bed, all 3 of them, plus Mark, creating a small island of family in the middle of the medical equipment and beeping monitors. "I need to tell you something," Evelyn began, her voice soft but steady. "My heart is getting weaker. The medicine isn't working as well anymore. The doctors think I might not have very much time left." Sophie's face crumpled. "But you just got married. You're supposed to stay with us now." "I want to stay with you more than anything, but sometimes our bodies stop working no matter how much we want them to keep going." Evelyn pulled Sophie close. "And when that happens, when my heart finally gives out, I'm going to die. It might be soon, maybe in a few weeks or days. I don't know exactly when, but I know it's coming." "No!" Lily was crying now too. "You have to fight. You have to get better." "I've been fighting, sweetheart. I've been fighting so hard. But there's only so much fighting can do when your body is this broken." Evelyn's voice cracked. "And I need you to understand something very important. This is not your fault. Nothing you did or didn't do caused this. My heart has been sick for a long time, long before I met you. This was always going to happen." Emma was the quietest, her face serious as she processed. "Will it hurt?" "When you die." Evelyn chose her words carefully. "I'm already hurting a lot. When I die, the hurting will stop. I'll be at peace, and I'll always love you, even when I'm not here to say it out loud anymore." "I don't want you to go, Sophie sobbed against Evelyn's shoulder. "I don't want to go either, but I can't change what's happening." She held all three girls, her thin arms somehow encompassing them all. "What I can do is tell you how much I love you, how being your mom has been the greatest gift of my life, how you three beautiful girls saved me when I'd given up on being saved, how every single day with you has been worth everything." Mark was crying openly now, watching his daughters cling to their dying mother, watching Evelyn pour every ounce of strength she had left into making sure they understood they were loved. "When I'm gone," Evelyn continued, "I need you to remember something. Love doesn't end when people leave. It just changes shape. I'll be in your memories, in your hearts, in all the things I've taught you. I'll be in the drawings you made me that are all over my walls. I'll be in the stories we read together and the songs we sang. I'll be with you always, just in a different way." "Promise?" Lily whispered. "I promise. And you know what else? You're going to be okay. It's going to hurt a lot at first. It's okay to be sad and angry and scared. But you have your daddy who loves you more than anything. You have your grandma. You have each other. And eventually, the hurt will get smaller, and you'll be able to remember the happy times without it making you too sad." They stayed like that for a long time, the five of them tangled together on the hospital bed, crying and holding each other and saying all the things that needed to be said while there was still time to say them. That night, after the girls were finally asleep, emotionally exhausted from the hardest conversation of their young lives, Evelyn told Mark what she needed. "I want to go back," she said. "Back where?" "To the hospital. To room 407, where we met." Her eyes were distant, remembering. "I want to see it one more time. Want to stand in the place where everything changed, where three little girls burst through the door and gave me a reason to live." Mark's first instinct was to say no. She was too weak. The trip would exhaust her. It was too risky. But then he looked at her face and saw the determination there, the need to complete some kind of circle, and he understood. "Okay," he said. "We'll go tomorrow." Getting Evelyn to the hospital required his mother's help, a wheelchair, portable oxygen, and more medication than Mark was comfortable giving her. But they made it, wheeling her through the familiar corridors toward the critical care wing. Room 407's door stood open. A different patient now, a different family gathered around a different bed. But the nurse, Marie, who'd been there that first day, saw them coming and understood immediately. "Give us 5 minutes," she told the family inside. "There's someone who needs to see this room." They waited while the family stepped out, confused but accommodating. Then Marie wheeled Evelyn inside, and Mark watched his wife's face transform as she took in the space that had defined the beginning of their story. "Right there," Evelyn whispered, pointing to where the bed had been positioned when she was the patient. "That's where I was lying when I heard children laughing. That's where Emma took my hand. That's where Sophie climbed up beside me. That's where Lily asked why I was alone. And that's where I burst in like a panicked idiot," Mark added, chasing 3 tornadoes in purple sneakers. Evelyn laughed, the sound weak but genuine. Best door you ever walked through? Best wrong door in the history of wrong doors. Marie was crying quietly in the corner. I remember that day. You were so withdrawn before they came, barely responsive. Then suddenly you were sitting up, smiling, actually engaging. I knew something had changed. Everything changed, Evelyn said simply. I was ready to die, had accepted it, even welcomed it. The pain, the loneliness. I was done. And then Mark's daughters showed me that being done wasn't the same as being finished, that I still had love to give and receive, that I still had reasons worth fighting for. She looked around the room one more time, committing it to memory. Thank you, she said to the walls, the machines, the space that had contained her darkest moment and her greatest transformation. Thank you for holding me until my family found me. They didn't stay long. Evelyn's energy was already flagging. On the way out, they passed the family waiting to return to their room. A mother, 2 teenagers, a father who looked exhausted and heartbroken. Evelyn reached out from her wheelchair, catching the mother's hand. You're not alone, she said. Even when it feels like you are. You're not alone. The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face, and Mark wheeled Evelyn away before she could see them fall. 2 weeks after their hospital visit, Evelyn could no longer leave her bed. The girls took turns sitting with her after school, reading to her, singing songs, just being present. Mark worked from home exclusively now, his laptop set up in Evelyn's room so he could be there for every moment. I'm ready, Evelyn told him one quiet evening while the girls were having dinner with Patricia in the kitchen. I've made peace with it, said everything I needed to say. I'm ready to let go. Mark felt panic rise in his throat. Don't say that. Don't give up. I'm not giving up. I fought so hard, Mark. Harder than the doctors thought possible. But my body is done fighting, and I need to let it rest. She touched his face with a hand that trembled. I need you to let me go when the time comes. I need you to promise me you won't make them do extraordinary measures. No heroics, no last-minute attempts to buy a few more hours, just peace and comfort and letting me slip away gently. I can't. Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know. You'll take care of our daughters. You'll help them through the grief. You'll keep living and loving and being the amazing father you've always been. Tears streamed down her face. And maybe someday when you're ready, you'll love again. You'll find someone who can give you all the years I couldn't, and I need you to know that's okay, that I want that for you. There won't be anyone else. Don't say that. Don't limit your future because I won't be in it. Promise me, Mark. Promise me you'll stay open to love. That you'll teach our daughters that loving again isn't betrayal, it's honoring what we had by believing love is possible more than once. He promised through tears, knowing it was what she needed to hear, not sure he'd ever be able to keep it. That night, Evelyn asked for all 3 girls to sleep in her room. Mark made a nest of blankets on the floor beside her bed, and the girls piled in, Sophie closest to Evelyn, Emma and Lily flanking their sister, all of them within reach of the woman who'd become their mother. Tell us a story, Lily requested, her voice sleepy. So Evelyn did, her voice barely above a whisper, words coming slower as exhaustion pulled at her. She told them a story about 3 brave princesses who saved a dying queen with the power of their love, about how the queen lived longer than anyone thought possible because the princesses gave her reasons to fight, about how even when the queen eventually died, she lived on in the hearts of the princesses who'd loved her. The girls fell asleep halfway through, their breathing evening out into the deep rhythms of childhood slumber. But Evelyn finished the story anyway, speaking into the darkness, making sure the ending was told. And the princesses grew up brave and kind, she whispered, because they'd learned that love was worth the risk, that showing up for people mattered, that hearts could break and heal and break again and still be capable of infinite love. And they lived their lives honoring the queen who taught them that lesson, by loving fiercely, by being present, by never letting fear make their decisions. Mark held her hand in the darkness. Beautiful story. True story, she corrected. Our story. 3 days later, Evelyn slipped into unconsciousness. Dr. Reynolds came, checked her vitals, and told Mark it would be soon, hours, maybe a day at most. Her heart was barely functioning. Her organs were shutting down. She was dying the way she'd wanted to, peacefully, surrounded by family, without heroic interventions. The girls stayed home from school. Patricia came and helped Mark explain what was happening, that Mommy Evelyn was saying goodbye, that her body was getting ready to rest, that it was okay to be sad but also to remember all the happy times they'd had together. They took turns sitting with her, holding her hand, telling her they loved her. Sophie sang the songs they'd learned together. Emma read from the picture books they'd shared. Lily whispered secrets and promises and all the things she'd always remember. Mark never left her side. He held her hand and talked to her even though she couldn't respond, telling her about their daughters, about the family they'd built, about how completely she'd changed his life. "You saved us," he whispered. "You saved me. I was just going through the motions before you, just surviving. You taught me how to live again, how to love again, how to be brave enough to risk my heart even when I knew it would break." Evelyn's breathing changed that evening, slower, shallower, the spaces between breaths growing longer. The girls were in the room, curled up in their blanket nest, when her breathing finally stopped, just stopped, like a candle being gently blown out. Mark felt the moment she left, the subtle shift from presence to absence, from Evelyn being in her broken body to Evelyn being somewhere else entirely. He held her still warm hand and let himself break completely, sobbing into the sheets, while his daughters cried around him and his mother quietly began making the necessary calls. Evelyn Carter Holloway died on a Tuesday evening in early autumn, surrounded by the family she'd found through accident and grace, loved until her very last breath. The funeral was small, just like the wedding had been. Mark stood at the front of the chapel with his daughters on either side, looking at the simple casket that held the woman who'd been part of their lives for less than a year but had changed everything. He gave no eulogy, couldn't trust his voice for that. Instead, he let the girls speak, each one sharing a memory. Sophie talked about the rainbow heart drawing. Emma described how Evelyn helped with homework even when she was exhausted. Lily simply said, "She was the best mom ever, and we miss her." They buried her in the cemetery where Rachel was buried, the two women who'd loved Mark and his daughters now resting not far from each other. Standing between the graves, Mark felt the weight of double loss, double grief, double widowhood. But he also felt gratitude. For Rachel, who'd given him these three amazing daughters. For Evelyn, who'd taught them all that love didn't need guarantees to be worth everything. The weeks after the funeral were brutal. The girls cried themselves to sleep most nights. Mark went through the motions of parenting while feeling like he was underwater, everything muffled and distant. The house felt empty despite being full of people. Patricia came daily, friends brought casseroles, the girls filled every room with noise. But Evelyn's absence was a presence all its own. Mark cleaned out her room one afternoon while the girls were at school, unable to bear seeing the hospital bed and medical equipment that no longer served any purpose. He boxed up her clothes to donate, kept a few items for the girls, a sweater that still smelled like her, the books she'd loved, the journal where she'd written letters to each of them to be opened on future birthdays. In the back of her closet, he found a box he didn't recognize. Inside were more letters, dozens of them, addressed to him, to the girls, to his mother, even to Dr. Reynolds. Each one carefully dated for specific future events. Emma's graduation, Sophie's wedding day, Lily's first heartbreak, Mark's 50th birthday. He opened the one addressed to him, marked, "When you're ready to love again." "My dearest Mark," she'd written in her careful handwriting, "if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you've started thinking about opening your heart to someone new. I need you to know that I want this for you. I want you to find love again, to build a life with someone who can give you all the years I couldn't. Don't let guilt hold you back. Don't think loving someone else diminishes what we had. You have so much love to give, and you deserve to give it to someone who can be there for the long haul. Our daughters deserve a mother who can watch them grow up. So when you meet her, and you will meet her, don't run. Don't hide behind my memory. Choose love again. Choose life. Choose the risk. That's what I'd want. That's what I'm asking you to do. Love her the way you loved me, completely, bravely, without holding back. And know that wherever I am, I'm cheering you on. Forever yours, Evelyn." Mark read the letter 3 times, crying harder each time, feeling Evelyn's permission wrap around him like an embrace. 6 months after Evelyn's death, Mark took the girls back to Memorial General. Not to room 407 this time, but to the volunteer coordinator's office. "We want to help," he told the woman behind the desk. "My wife, my late wife, she was a patient here. She died alone before my daughters found her and decided she needed them. She always said if she survived, she'd come back here and sit with patients who didn't have visitors." "She didn't survive," Emma added quietly. "But we can do it for her." So they did. Every Saturday, Mark and the girls would spend a few hours at Memorial General visiting patients in the critical care wing who had no family, no friends, no one to sit beside them while they fought their battles. They'd bring drawings and books and their particular brand of chaotic love. They'd hold hands and listen to stories and remind dying strangers that they weren't alone, that they mattered, that someone cared. "You're doing what Mommy Evelyn did for us," Sophie explained to an elderly woman in room 412, except backwards. "She needed us, but now we're helping people who need us." Mark watched his daughters spread the love Evelyn had taught them and felt his broken heart begin to heal in ways he hadn't thought possible. 1 year after Evelyn's death, Mark took the girls back to room 407. A different patient again, a middle-aged man recovering from surgery. But Marie was there, still working her shifts, still remembering. "You came back," she said, pulling Mark into a hug. "We needed to," he explained. "Needed to see where it all started. Needed to remember." Marie led them inside after getting permission from the patient. Mark stood in the space where he'd first seen Evelyn, where his daughters had climbed onto a stranger's bed and changed the trajectory of 5 lives. "I brought you something," he told Marie, pulling out a framed photo. It showed Evelyn on their wedding day, surrounded by the girls, all of them laughing at something Sophie had said. "I thought you might want to remember her." Marie took the photo with trembling hands. "She was special. You all were special. Are special." "She wanted to volunteer here," Emma said. "After she got better, she wanted to help people like you helped her. We're doing it for her now," Lily added, "every Saturday." "Oh, she'd be proud," Marie said, tears streaming down her face. "So proud of all of you." As they left the hospital that day, Mark felt something shift. The grief was still there, would always be there, but it had transformed into something else, something that looked like purpose and meaning and the understanding that Evelyn's death hadn't ended her impact on the world. She lived on in his daughters who'd learned to love fearlessly, in the patients they visited who received comfort from strangers turned family, in Mark's own slowly healing heart that was learning it could hold both grief and gratitude, loss and love, endings and new beginnings. That evening, he opened another of Evelyn's letters. This one marked 1 year after I'm gone. It was short, just a few lines. "You made it a whole year without me. I'm so proud of you. Keep going. Keep loving. Keep teaching our daughters that life is worth living even when it's hard. Keep being the amazing father I fell in love with. And Mark, thank you. For the wrong door, for the right choice, for every single moment we had together. I love you. Always. Evelyn." Mark sat in the backyard where they'd gotten married, watching fireflies emerge in the twilight, and let himself feel everything, the grief and the gratitude, the loss and the love, the ending and the continuation. His daughters joined him, piling onto the bench beside him, and together they watched the fireflies dance in the gathering dark. "Do you think Mommy Evelyn can see the fireflies from heaven?" Sophie asked. Mark thought about the woman who'd taught them all about borrowed time and brave love, about showing up and staying present even when it hurt. "I think," he said carefully, "that wherever she is, she's happy we're together, that we're still loving each other, that we learned the lessons she taught us about making every moment count." "I miss her," Emma whispered. "Me too, sweetheart, every single day." "But we're glad we knew her, right?" Lily asked. "Even though it hurts that she's gone?" Mark pulled all 3 girls close, these brave, beautiful children who'd looked at a dying stranger and decided she needed them, who'd loved without guarantees and grieved without regret. "Absolutely," he said firmly. "We're glad we knew her. We're glad we loved her. We're glad we walked through that wrong door and found exactly what we needed." Years later, when the girls were older and the acute pain of loss had softened into bittersweet memory, Mark would sometimes find them looking at the photos from Evelyn's brief time with their family. He'd see them wearing her sweater, or reading her letters, or visiting her grave with flowers. And he'd remember a dying woman in a hospital room, 3 fearless children, and a choice to love even when loss was guaranteed. He'd remember that the wrong door had led to exactly the right place, that borrowed time was still time worth having, that love didn't need forever to be worth everything. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the fireflies danced and the world felt gentle, he'd swear he could hear Evelyn's voice on the wind, whispering the words she'd said that first day when 3 small girls decided she was worth saving. Best thing that's happened to me in months. And Mark would smile through tears, knowing that feeling had been entirely mutual. That sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the shortest ones. That sometimes a few perfect months matter more than a lifetime of playing it safe. That sometimes walking through the wrong door is exactly what you need to do to find your way home.